projects. It's a 4-day
tour of totalitarian vanity projects.
Yes.
Gosh,
so there
right
you go.
Up my street.
You'll be able to travel to the square in the capital, Pyongyang, where 100,000 party faithful will be heading to celebrate their great and glorious leader. And all that sort of
Well, I
thing.
suppose it's interesting, but it's not what I'd put number one.
It's a 4-day trip.
Yeah.
And it's sold out.
And they're actively marketing that as a holiday.
Well, that I don't know.
Oh, gosh,
That
weird.
I don't know.
I thought you were going to offer me a ride on the Icon of the Seas, which is the new Royal Caribbean cruise ship. And it takes 10,000 passengers.
Oh.
10,000 on one ship.
As someone who likes a cruise, is that too much?
Yeah.
Because it is like a city on...
Well, yes,
city
that's
on
like
the
going on a
sea.
floating city, isn't it, really? 10,000 on one ship.
Oh, I wouldn't like it.
I don't think so, no. I mean, I know it'll be a big ship. It's something like 20 stories high. But, you know, doesn't that give you the creeps a bit?
It does. I couldn't do that. I don't fancy a cruise. I've never done it. What I do fancy is a river cruise.
Yeah, they're lovely too.
They seem a bit more sophisticated somehow.
And they are, because they go through cities. So you can actually experience the countryside and then enter a city and they actually dock in the city. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. No, one day, save up a bit for those. They're a bit expensive.
Oh, yeah, they are. Well, the good ones are.
Anyway, look, we're gonna talk about US nuclear weapons being stationed in the UK in just a moment.
And about Boris joining the army.
Yes, I don't know that they would want him.
No, that's what... Surely, if they're ever going to conscript, they're going to want young, fit guys, not
Yes.
Boris Johnson.
Be more Home Guard, more Captain Mannering for Boris, I'm afraid.
But the point is, he's saying, look, you know, if it came to the point of volunteering to fight for your country, I'd do it.
Yeah, which
That's
is,
a good sentiment, isn't it?
Fair enough. But we're going to start as we're just getting a line up and running on that one. You know what the internet's like these days. So while we wait for that, let's talk about Donald Trump, should we? Who's been ordered to pay more than $83 million in damages for defamation. That's against former columnist E. Jean Carroll.
She accused him of destroying her reputation after he denied that he allegedly raped her nearly 3 decades ago.
Well, in response, Mr. Trump said he fully disagrees with the verdicts and will be appealing, calling it a Biden-directed witch hunt.
Fascinating, but an awful lot of money. We're now joined by the former advisor to the Bank of England and Trump associate, I think you can call you, Roger Gewolb. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
This is a stonkingly large amount of money, even for defamation.
It's 10 times more than she actually requested in her lawsuit. Yeah, it's quite ridiculous. It's like the jury that fined Rudy Giuliani $150 million and forced him into bankruptcy. It's just, you know, the United States is as divided as we are here, if not more so, and it's the other side meting out punishment.
Yeah, but with all these things, I mean, what is fascinating over here is the more Trump finds himself in trouble, the more people seem to rally round him.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think, you know, they realize there's something not right here. Now, when he claims that the Biden administration and the, as they're calling it in the newspapers more and more, the Biden crime family is, he does like to call names like
He does.
Crooked
He loves
Hillary.
his names, doesn't he?
Yeah, Crooked Hillary. Well, you know.
Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, Sleepy Joe. He claims that a lot of it is trumped up, you'll forgive me, in order to stop him. And you can see that because so much of it doesn't hold together. And this woman, Ms. Carroll, many people have written, you know, has kind of a history of a fascination with rape and other issues, and it's all kind of strange and murky.
Well, she might do if she was raped 30 years ago, as she claims. I mean, it would give you a fascination.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, this hearing yesterday was not about whether she was raped or not.
No.
This was just to assess damages.
This is because he called her a liar.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of as if on my way here, I was stopped and given a ticket, and I said to the police officer, wouldn't you be better off finding criminals at this hour instead of giving me a ticket for going 22 miles an hour? And he said, okay, sir, now the fine's $1,000. I mean, it's a bit of that, you know, but he's a Trump.
So this is the jury's way, or was it in front of a jury, or was it a judge?
Yeah.
This is their way of punishing him, or of just trying to keep slapping him down,
Both.
so that in the end it becomes very, very difficult for him.
Both, yeah, and he wouldn't stop. I've met his lawyer, an extremely, if I'm allowed to say this, beautiful and talented young lady, and I'm sure she did everything she could to have him chill. But he's Donald, you know, and you're right. People love him for not taking you-know-what off anybody and standing up for himself, which frankly, these days, watching the Houthis bomb our shipping, I mean, they blew up an innocent oil tanker yesterday, and Rishi Rich and Sleepy Joe have yet to, Rishi said afterwards, you do that again and we're going to come, I mean, you know, come on. I'd rather have somebody who gets a little mouthy.
I mean, there are people, and Boris Johnson's one of them actually, who say maybe the world at the moment needs Donald Trump
my gosh,
to be president.
drop Boris into the Houthis. You say he's an old Captain Mannering. I think they would be very disorganized within a matter of hours if you parachuted him into the middle there.
But the problem is, this is the issue, and there may be a very valid point, right, to say, well, people don't want to mess with Donald Trump. People keep saying, well, there were no wars when Donald Trump was in power. Whether that was down to him or not is a debatable issue. But he's unpredictable. And there is, I mean, wouldn't there be a concern if what you're saying with the Houthis, well, he'd go in and sort them out and there'd be no messing? Well, there's a real danger of escalation with that. And that's people's concern, that things are acted upon without the necessary thought.
Didn't happen when he was president. He actually is probably the only person in the world who made friends with Kim Jong-un, and you know,
Well, sort of fell out with him, made friends with him, and then fell out.
I think the fell out with him was an act to build up to bring him to a sense. He's quite a performer. He's a bit like Berlusconi. He's a showman. And yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are slavishly committed to him and good, but I think they're very disappointed with Biden. And as people have mentioned over and over again, who is there, for goodness sake, if Biden falls down? So it's a real difficult situation. And he is, I was at his Christmas Eve dinner party at Mar-a-Lago, and I was sitting next to a man I know, lovely chap, an ex-British Army major and MP who lives over there. And some people are so fervently dedicated to the Donald that it's Christmas Eve. He nudged me, and we were at this table, and Trump was there at the next one. And he said, look at that. He said, there is the savior of the Western world. And here it is, Christmas Eve. And like Jesus, he is castigated so wrongly by so many.
See that? Ooh, but isn't that worrying? Isn't that? That's part of the. And we always get, if we say anything which is remotely critical of Donald Trump, we get loads of you get in touch and say. But my view would be critical thinking. When he did meet Kim Jong-un, this GB News didn't exist then. And I praised him on it. I said, only Donald Trump could have done this, actually. Only Donald could do this. But there's got to be critical thinking, hasn't there? And it worries me when he becomes almost like a saviour-type figure. It would worry me if that was any politician.
I think he's a great showman. I mean, I've met him a number of times. I don't know him that well, but the man I met is very intelligent, very funny, very strategic, very sarcastic sense of humor. And I think he puts on a bit of a persona because it attracts part of his following. So I'm not particularly worried about him hitting buttons that he shouldn't hit.
You're not?
No, not at all.
Well, interesting. It's interesting to try and delve.
Joe Biden's more likely, when he feels he hasn't done enough, to reach out and hit a button, I think.
Well, unfortunately, Joe Biden may not know
where the button is.
May not see it. He may fall over it. That's what's happened before, isn't it?
That's the worry. That's the worry. I just don't know why we can't have
some better politicians.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Some young blood.
Absolutely. But the Democrats particularly, I mean, I can't believe that they're going with Biden. Don't you find it strange?
I find that extraordinary.
The two candidates, Marianne Williamson is an author, and she is leading, I wouldn't say leading, or well, yes, I would. One of her main planks is that we must give $100 billion to black people to make up for slavery. Now, would you give up your holiday as an American for something your great-great-great-grandfather probably wasn't even involved in? And how are you going to find which African Americans to give the money? You know, and that's what she's
improve
leading.
their lives now.
She's Oprah Winfrey's spiritual advisor. She's going to run the country. And the other fellow, Dean Phillips, is a very successful businessman who grew his family's liquor business to great heights, and he is a congressman. But does that qualify him to run America, particularly at a time like this?
It's the money that does, isn't it?
Yeah.
It costs so much to run for president.
Yeah.
To become a successful politician in America, it costs so much.
So much. Hundreds
that
of millions.
inevitably, it's going to result in people that you might not particularly want.
And it's going to cost the Donald $83 million more.
Yeah, well, it is.
Well, at the moment, yes.
Roger, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fascinating, isn't it? American politics.
So very different to ours.
Yeah.
Now, sticking with the United States, actually, they're going to station nuclear weapons in the UK for the first time in 15 years. And that's down to tensions escalating with Russia.
Pentagon documents have revealed that RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk would host the warheads that are reportedly 3 times as powerful as the Hiroshima bomb.
Well, this comes as Boris Johnson has vowed that he would fight for his country if the UK goes to war.
Well, let's speak right now to political commentator Stephen Carlton Woods. Good morning, Stephen. What's your reaction to both of those points, actually? The fact that, once again, we're going to have American nuclear weapons in Britain and that Boris Johnson will join up if necessary.
Right, well, first of all, I'm quite surprised this story's still running. I covered this on my radio show on Thursday afternoon, looking at what these comments that were said at the time, but this rolled over into yesterday's papers as well. So the Telegraph led with this and pointed out the fact it's the first time that the Americans will have their nuclear weapons on our soil in 15 years. Now, back in 2008, as cost-cutting measures and the demise of the Cold War, that's why they removed their nuclear warheads from British soil. However, when we think about the seriousness of nuclear war these days, and as you said earlier, Anne, the far more powerful now. In fact, the 20 times more powerful than the bomb on Hiroshima. So, in essence, it would take only 2 nuclear warheads to wipe out mankind. So I think, we've had all these leading people talking about this, and Boris has had his tongue-in-cheek article yesterday in the Mail. I think that the bottom line for this is a recruitment drive across NATO, seeing as though that military forces, their numbers have been dwindling over the years, and they're all missing their targets to keep the levels that they need. And what more than a great story coming in everyone's press, saying that we're on the brink of war again, and it's all this doom and gloom, and we need people to join up for our forces. So I think there's a bit of that in the background. With the seriousness, are we really heading for a war within 20 years with Russia? I think the way technology is and what's happened, I think it's unlikely for it to escalate any further, because if it does escalate, the ultimate thing is nuclear war, and that's the biggest deterrent there is.
Well, biggest fear there is. Whether it's a deterrent anymore, I don't know. Let's talk about Boris Johnson, because we can't help but ask. He's saying he'd sign up if necessary. Would they want him? I mean, it's a nice sentiment, actually. It's nice that he's saying he would be prepared to put himself on the front line, but it's anyone under 50 is going to have an issue, aren't they?
I think it's this good old-fashioned British spirit and all that lot. It's very much within the flavour of his writing style anyway for him to do the article that he did. I mean, and the headline with it as well, when he said he said that he'd be coming to attention for taking up duty and all that lot. I thought it was very amusing the way he did that, and the headline for his little section. And it's like, I think he's jumping on the back of this thing about we need to bolster our forces. I think our targets are off by about 6% for our own military. So this takes us back to the days of Kitchener saying, we want you and stuff like that. So our numbers are down. We need to maintain them at a certain level. And Boris is like, got behind this with a bit of gusto and done his amusing article yesterday with a slant of seriousness in it as well, because Boris very much does mix it up in that way. So I would say it's still a bit of tongue-in-cheek, and if they do need people in the army for any serious escalation of war, where we'd need land troops, I think there'd be a lot more people that'd be chomping at the bit to get involved with that.
Yeah. OK. Stephen, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. That's the piece.
That's Boris's column today.
He's promoted himself to Lance Corporal.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, wouldn't be Lance Corporal, Private Johnson.
Yes, sir, he said. Lance Corporal Johnson reporting for duty.
Lance Corporal. It's very odd.
Si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for that, actually, though he didn't do that when he was in power.
No, but the world was a bit different then.
Was it?
Well, it
It
felt different, didn't it?
You know, under his time in government, the armed forces have been cut and cut and cut again, and now it's about we need to increase them again. So I would throw that into the mix.
I think it's a worry, though, isn't it, that it would appear that so many young people would not think for a moment of signing up and being prepared to fight for their country.
Yeah, I think it is a worry. However, I can sort of understand it, in the sense that they haven't known war involving this country in the way that previous generations have.
No.
I mean, it hasn't happened in my lifetime, but of course my grandparents were involved in all of that.
It's the first thing my father did when war was like he went down to try and sign up for the RAF.
I mean, my parents were born, you know, during ration time and all that sort of thing. So I have a connection to it. But anyone sort of younger than me, not even their grandparents can relate to it. So it's just not within their mindset, is it?
No, but whose fault is that? Maybe
It's ours. We should be keeping. It's a bit like we're going to be talking about Holocaust Memorial Day today, and one of the key lessons is always you need to
Never
talk
forget.
about it so that we don't repeat it. And that's what we haven't done with this and the war films and all the rest of it. There's always war films on the telly when I was little and all that sort of thing. It's all died off.
Although, you know, it's a big D-Day anniversary coming up, June the 6th this year. And we do always celebrate D-Day, don't we? We always sort of mark it. And the cenotaph and everything like that, we mark it. But we mark it as something that happened really long ago and not part of our life. And yet, actually, look at it, it is.
I think it needs to be looked at again. Anyway, let us know what you think. 6:20, let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom. And new figures reveal there is a clear geographical divide in life expectancy in the UK. The south of England has the highest, the north lagging behind. Now, this is figures from the Office for National Statistics. It shows a gap of over a decade for men and 7 years for women.
The Crown Prosecution Service says harmful myths about rape and consent continue to impact survivors and justice. The largest UK survey of its kind in 5 years has revealed that more than half of 18 to 24-year-olds were unsure if it's still rape if a victim doesn't resist or fight back. The CPS says it'll use the findings to update training and guidance for prosecutors.
Baroness Mone and her husband have had their assets frozen following an application by the Crown Prosecution Service. It comes as the couple are investigated for their involvement in supplying PPE during the pandemic. Michelle Mone previously admitted she lied while denying connections to MedPro, which made profits of £60 million.
6:21. Now, today marks World Holocaust Day. It's a time to remember the millions of people who died during the Holocaust under Nazi persecution, as well as commemorating the genocides that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur.
Well, events are taking place across the UK, and as our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody explains, the commemoration is more poignant and relevant than ever.
Children in Dorchester, lighting candles and remembering. The theme for this year's event, the fragility of freedom. It's a fragile concept and one that's inspired Dorchester's young to draw, to make models and to write poetry. The Mayor of Dorchester says the contribution of the young is vital.
We must never forget. It's important to remember. It's important to reflect. So digest what you see, and it's only that way that we might be able to learn from the appalling genocides in the past.
World Holocaust Day remembers atrocities across the world. Not only the slaughter of 6 million Jews, gypsies, disabled and gay people at the hands of the Nazis, but also the killing of 2 million in Cambodia under the communist regime of Pol Pot in the 1970s. Hundreds of thousands of deaths in Guatemala between 1960 and 1996. The genocide of up to 1 million Tutsi people in Rwanda in 1994. And the continued killing of the Darfuri people in Sudan. But in a week where acres of newsprint has been devoted to talk of a third world war and even conscription, Dorchester's MP Chris Loder believes the message of World Holocaust Day has never been as relevant as it is today.
I think what, for me, as a Member of Parliament, was quite unsettling was actually to see some of the terms and references here on the screen behind me a little earlier that are actually still being used today in some protests that happen in London. And that is very uncomfortable and I think is food for thought.
Events continue throughout the weekend with the lighting of candles, the saying of prayers and the hope that by remembering and commemorating we can prevent the atrocities of the past from ever being repeated. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, this is breakfast. Let's get a check on your weather this morning with Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
Why?
Start again. Hello.
Yes, well, I was going to say it's 26 minutes past 6. Now, the King is doing well, apparently, following his hospital treatment. We'll be getting an update on his condition next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:28, good morning to you. Now, the King is doing well after undergoing a procedure for an enlarged prostate. He has spent the night in hospital.
Yes, he was spotted entering the London clinic on Friday morning. That's yesterday, isn't it? Yeah. With the Queen at his side. It's the same hospital where the Princess of Wales, of course, is being cared for following her abdominal surgery.
Let's talk to former butler to King Charles. We haven't got it. No, Grant Harold, his line's just gone. We are having terrible internet trouble at the moment. Are you having terrible internet trouble at home at the moment?
Is it stormy weather? Mind you, it's not stormy anymore now.
No, it's not stormy anymore, but it's all a bit dodgy at the minute.
But a lot of the newspapers are commenting that in the olden days, it is said that King Charles, on his way in, obviously he was booked in for an early procedure, but he popped in to see Kate first.
Oh, good.
And, well, exactly, that's totally normal to us, isn't it?
Yeah.
But a lot of the commentators are sort of pointing out that in the olden days that wouldn't have happened, you know.
Oh.
Everybody very separate, very different.
I see. Oh, no, they say that's lovely. You should go and see your daughter-in-law. See how she's getting on.
Especially as she's in the same hospital.
Yeah.
There are rumours that she may be leaving today.
Yes.
Aren't there?
Well, let's hope so. And then she's got to rest up for whatever she's had done. We don't know. Grant Harold, hopefully, can join us now. There you are, Grant. Good to see you this morning. I find this whole thing extraordinary because, and we've talked about this before, but it's the detail and it's the fact that the King has been so public about this. We know exactly what is going on, pretty much, with him. And it is having an effect. There is a Charles effect when it comes to people inquiring about their prostate.
Absolutely. Good morning, Anne. Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, absolutely right. There's been a huge amount of hits on the NHS website as well, looking this up, which is obviously, I don't think it's just journalists. I think it's obviously members of the public who obviously want to know more about it, which is a great thing. And I think this is the reason. Well, this is why it's been said the King has given this information, is to kind of be very public about it, to get people to obviously check. And I think this is a kind of sign of the things to come within the royal family. And as you've mentioned, in the past, the late Queen, they never really gave details about the health. All we ever found out was after they had a procedure done. And I don't know if you remember, like the late Queen Mother, I remember years and years ago when she had a fishbone removed from her throat, and I think we only found out about it on the day she was leaving hospital. So it's quite unusual for them to make this kind of announcement ahead of the procedure. So we're aware that he's had the procedure and obviously hopefully home today or over the next couple of days.
Yes, apparently there were several people had gathered to see if they could witness him going into hospital, and they did. And people were sort of yelling out really nice messages. And there does seem to be love and affection there for a man who, several years ago, we would have said, it's not going to happen. He won't be a popular king. But he does seem to be already.
Absolutely, Anne, you're quite right. I've even noticed that. I've got different friends who are probably not the biggest supporters of the King, but certainly have changed their views over the last year within what they've seen him doing. The fact that they are more in line, more in touch with the public, if I can say that. The late Queen was as well, but it was a very different monarchy, wasn't it? The way she was brought up and the way she did things was very different to, say, how Prince William will be doing things. And I think his father in recent years has shown that people always said he was eccentric, he was old-fashioned, out of touch. I never saw that when I worked for him, and I think that's what the public are getting to see, and that's why there's this affection. So the fact that he is having this procedure, obviously the public want to kind of let them know that they're thinking of them. And the same with Princess of Wales. I understand there's been many, many, many letters and cards sent to her wishing her the best of health.
Which is lovely. I think it's all very nice. But honestly, I think the King has been extremely brave as a man to talk about something that men don't like to talk about. And he's the most,
but the point is,
recognised man in the world.
Yeah, but by doing so, he's got people talking about it.
Yeah, good on him.
Yeah.
Grant, really good to see
Absolutely.
you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
I think men and health matters, and especially men and that area, talking about it is remarkable. I'm really struck by it.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think he's very brave. It was an obvious decision he must have taken and said, yes, all right, we'll say it, and for various reasons. And it has had, as you say, the Charles effect, which is brilliant. I mean, gosh, what a legacy, actually, just in that alone. If people got onto the NHS website, as they did, we know, because of the King, and if it has saved one life, it probably has saved more than one life, then... brilliant. Well done, him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's have a look at the top stories for you at 6:33. And the US government is going to station nuclear weapons at a British base for the first time in, about 15 years, I think. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has vowed to join the army if the country was to go to war.
A New York court orders Donald Trump to pay $83 million to the writer E. Jean Carroll for defamation. And then he goes on to a Republican rally in Nevada.
And the world is remembering the millions of victims who suffered under Nazi persecution on this Holocaust Memorial Day.
We must never forget. It's important to remember. It's only that way that we might be able to learn from the appalling genocides in the past.
And parents are in uproar after a school in Kent has threatened to fine them for picking up their children late.
Time for the sport this morning. Aidan McGee is here. Good morning.
Good morning to you both.
On a bombshell day.
Without doubt. I mean, it was huge news out of Liverpool about 9 o'clock yesterday, I think it was. They trailed on their social media platforms that their manager of 9 years of considerable repute, Jurgen Klopp, one of the elite coaches in world football, was going to leave the club at the end of the season. He cited a lack of energy. He said, I can't keep doing this again and again and again. And it's important for context here. Managing one of those big clubs, Anne, is like being Prime Minister, the pressure you're under.
I can imagine. And the scrutiny.
The scrutiny, and you can't please everybody. And there was the trail, the pre-recorded interview yesterday. He also gave a press conference at 3 o'clock. We can hear from him now, actually. He talks about, as I say, a lack of energy and expands more generally on the reasons for leaving Anfield.
Ending up as the manager of Liverpool FC is a fairy tale and a very difficult thing to plan. I would say impossible to plan and difficult to reach. But it's only possible if you are very busy and 100,000% committed to everything you do when you dedicate your whole life to it. That's what I did. I am still a normal guy. I just don't live a normal life for too long now. And I don't want to wait until I'm too old for having a normal life.
I think he comes across as a remarkable, common sense, rather lovely individual.
He is indeed. Yeah. I mean, I first came across him probably 10 years ago, maybe longer than that, in Germany. I thought, if this is a guy who was cut out to manage in the Premier League, this was him. And Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, with the personality he has there and the connection he has with the local people there, it was a marriage made in heaven. And that was borne out on the pitch. They won several trophies. They won the European Cup for the 6th time back in 2019, the long-awaited Premier League title, first time in 30 years. You two must remember Liverpool winning everything in the 80s and back in the 70s even. I mean, he helped recapture that kind of era, and he's their most successful manager in Premier League times. My only concern, though, would be the timing, because they're in good shape. He's rebuilt the side. They're somewhere near where they were 2 years ago when they were just 2 matches away from winning the quadruple. And I think back to Sir Alex Ferguson in 2002, and He announced midway through the season that he would be quitting Man United. They were top of the league at the time, but that handed the initiative to Arsenal because his players, I wouldn't say they're down tools, but they certainly lost their edge because they were playing for a manager who wasn't going to be there next season. I look at Liverpool's squad: Alisson out of contract in the summer, Trent Alexander-Arnold out of contract in the summer, Mohamed Salah possibly going to Saudi, who wouldn't with the money on offer. And there's a huge change going to be happening at Liverpool. And I wonder whether Manchester City in action last night as they took the field would be thinking, and Arsenal as well, maybe some initiative might be taken to their end.
When's he actually going to stop?
End of the season.
End of the season.
See. But I mean, I think he's got another job in him. I mean, historically, he was at Mainz in Germany for 7 years, took a year out, went to Borussia Dortmund for 7 years, took a year out. Liverpool have done well to get 9 years out of him. I think he's got another job in him. I think he'll manage the German national team. He said yesterday in that 3 o'clock press conference that he wouldn't manage another side in England, so we're not going to see him in the Premier League again, although in football you never know what can happen. And in terms of successors, the overwhelming standout candidate at the moment, I would say, is probably Xabi Alonso, the former Liverpool midfielder, doing brilliant things in Germany, as Klopp did, although he's actually from Spain, and he's taken Bayer Leverkusen unexpectedly to the top of the league. His CEO there yesterday said that there's nothing written down on paper, but he intimated that he wouldn't stand in his way if he was to go to Liverpool. So huge change at Liverpool, huge change in the Premier League. Rather than looking at what happens next, it's time to reflect on what we had in Jurgen Klopp, I believe.
Yeah, a lot of upset for the Spurs.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they played Manchester City 6 times at that stadium since moving in there since 2019, and City hadn't even scored a goal. They changed that last night. They knocked Spurs out of the FA Cup. That's another trophyless season for Tottenham, so it's 16 years in counting. As for Manchester City, well, they won the treble last season. I mean, they could possibly do it again this year. They're still in the FA Cup, obviously, as a result of last night. Right up there at the top of the Premier League, finding their stride. And who knows, they may even go all the way in the Champions League as well.
Meanwhile, down under, it's the ladies' singles championship.
That's right. We've got Zheng Qinwen, 8:30 this morning, up against Arina Sabalenka. Arina Sabalenka aiming to become the first woman to retain the trophy. That's how hard it is to win down there in those conditions. Nobody's done it in consecutive years. She can do that this year. And nobody from China has won it since Li Na back in 2014, 10 years ago. So it's going to be a fascinating match-up.
Yeah.
When? 8:30 this morning.
Oh.
You've got to be with us.
I know. Oh.
And of course,
I was just thinking, oh, yummy. That would be a nice match to watch.
Well, Djokovic was out as well yesterday in the semi-final. He was up against Jannik Sinner, lost in 4 sets, and we're going to see a final with Jannik Sinner tomorrow in action against Daniil Medvedev, the Russian who came close to winning it 2 years ago. He was 2-0 up at 2 sets up in the final, lost to Rafa Nadal. We'll be hoping to put that right tomorrow.
OK. Aidan, thanks very much indeed.
Maybe just don't tell me what happens, and I'll record it.
Yeah, do.
That might
you
be
could do
the way
that.
forward.
Yeah.
Now, still to come for you, would you put pineapple on your fry-up?
Apparently, that's the way to do it.
Yeah,
you grill pineapple.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah, and apparently it's very, very traditional as a part of the Great British Fry-Up.
Yeah. Sorry, not this morning, about 2 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah, but you think of pineapple in a chow mein, no, wouldn't you?
I guess I've had pineapple. I have pineapple in pineapple.
But, well, me too, I love pineapple. But pineapple as part of a Great British breakfast, apparently that's the thing to do.
Anyway, we're talking about that in the paper review
yes.
in a couple of minutes.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Time to take you through the papers this morning. We'll have a look at the Times. It has a bereaved mother pleading for a public inquiry into her child's preventable stabbing death in Nottingham.
The Daily Mail reports on the Queen saying King is fine after undergoing prostate surgery.
The Guardian has Israel facing pressure to prevent civilian deaths in Gaza.
The Express reports on the King choosing to be treated in the hospital where the Princess of Wales is staying so that it would save taxpayers' money.
The Mirror has Jurgen Klopp and stepping down as Liverpool manager.
Shock. Right, joining us to go through what's making the news, assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, and showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy. Lovely to see you both. Shall we start off with you, Stephanie, talking about the King?
Yes, well, it's good news to hear that the King's OK following his treatment for an enlarged prostate at the London clinic. And rarely, if ever, do we hear of two royals being at the same hospital at the same time, being treated for different conditions. But it seems the King is quite frugal. And the reason why he's at the London clinic at the same time as Kate, because he thought it will save taxpayers' money. So the royal, the Palisades and the royals in general, they do not disclose how much they spend on security, but it's still estimated to be about £7,000 per day. So by both King Charles and Kate being at the same hospital, they've made a saving of £14,000. But I think beyond the money, I think it's nice to know that they have that support and that, you know, the King visited Kate yesterday. So it is kind of
it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And to be honest, I think the King has been quite frugal in general. You know, we saw last year he was telling the royals to turn off the heat in the palaces and stuff. So he's really reading the room of how the public feel, because, you know, I've seen some horrible articles of some people are like, oh, well, Kate should have been treated at an NHS hospital. She would have been out quicker. It would have been less money. And, you know, we do want to think about their health and that they're getting the best care as the royals. So I think King Charles is aware of the criticism that the royals do face when they do have these kind of measures.
Well, look, I think it's not a bad idea in some respects. However, you know, treating a royal member within a normal NHS ward would be, I mean, it would cause more problems.
It really would,
for everybody
yeah.
else in there, to be honest. Cindy, let's have a look at the Telegraph, should we? I don't know what to think about all this, really, but the, you know, US moving nuclear weapons back to the UK.
Yes, so the US did host nuclear weapons in the UK up until 2008, so basically throughout the Cold War and beyond. And in 2008, they removed them, deciding that the Cold War threat was well and truly over. It's a sign of our times now in 2024 that these are now being considered to be moved back. And this is a great scoop by the Telegraph's US editor, Tony Diver, talking about all these preparations, budget, equipment updates, barracks updates, all of these things that are seeming to point towards these nuclear weapons being moved back. Now, it's important to say this airbase is manned by US Air Force, so of course the British will know what's going on. And Russia have said that if this happens, it'll be seen as a massive escalation. So it's just one of those things, isn't it?
That's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, by defending yourself, you're actually making the other side more paranoid.
Yeah.
And then that's how the tensions are racked up.
But we've got to, haven't we?
I don't know, and I feel like we're jumping the gun here. Obviously, I'm just, you know, they've got intelligence more than the public are aware of what's going on. But, you know, Moscow sees us doing stuff like this and they start preparation as well. So I just think, do we need to take these measures? But then sometimes I can be a bit naive about these things, so...
Well, I know also young, frankly, because anyone of my age totally used to having US fighter jets and we knew nuclear weapons right throughout the time. I mean, and so many Air Force bases in Britain were US Air Force bases. And to me, it's just sort of, OK, we've done it before, we'll do it again.
I think the other thing to say is that the UK already has nuclear weapons.
Well,
so
exactly.
it's
So
you know,
so
if we wanted to strike Russia with nuclear weapons, we've
got them anyway.
Exactly. So I'm not sure it's a massive... But Russia obviously has to say this.
Well,
if they don't say anything, it will look ridiculous. But I think it is honestly just a sign of the times of how much the world has changed since 2008.
And isn't it an important time to strengthen our ties with the USA at the moment?
Well, we've always had a good relationship with them when it comes to stuff of, like, wars and partnerships, so I guess we do need to solidify that a bit more.
Yeah, maybe so. This one is, I find interesting, because when I first saw this picture of Claudia Schiffer on the papers with her cat in a backpack, I thought I was the only person going, what? Because it just seemed like everyone was going, oh, isn't this marvellous and lovely and all of it. Thankfully, Cats Protection have jumped in and said this is awful. And it is, frankly.
You know...
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Equally...
Cat's going to hate that.
Well, that's the thing. Fashionistas will see that and be like, ooh, cute, because I've always wanted to have a dog in a bag kind of thing. But actually, I'm glad that they have come out and spoken about this, because Cats Protection, because Chip, the cat on the picture screen there, he stars in the new movie Argyle, so he was actually a star of the movies, hence why she brought the cat to the premiere. But Cats Protection said that cats do not like to be confined in spaces like that, so for him to be carried in a bag like that, he probably had a bit of anxiety, stress...
Not if he'd been trained.
Well...
Yeah, you know, I don't know. But wasn't the do that she attended, wasn't it... everybody had turned up in silly animal outfits, hadn't they?
Not really, not like...
There was one...
Not from the pictures I saw.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of a different do.
I think the reason she's brought in, because he stars in the film, and I can imagine for the red carpet, actually, he was probably more protected in the bag than being exposed to all the paps and...
Yeah, well, as you said, there might be a difference because he's clearly a trained animal, so therefore it might be different, but it's the example it sets.
Yeah.
And those backpacks with his little window to look out of, well, cats hate that.
I know, I'm kind of
They want to hide away.
Quite cute.
Oh, no.
And fundamentally, animals do go through a lot, don't they? I mean, not that we're justifying, but you know, they have a lot of capability. A dog's gone into space, for God's sake.
Well, yes.
How anxiety-riven would that have been?
Well, yeah.
You go into any pet store and you can get those little tiny little wheelie suitcases and train your dog to get it to go in, and they poke their head out, and you can take them with you.
Yeah,
wherever
but
you
dogs
go.
and cats are different. Like
Well, I think it's really.
Yeah,
You should know. I know.
We don't know enough about cats.
No, I don't know.
I don't know anything about cats.
Cats love tiny spaces if they're crawling into them themselves.
Yeah, that's what
you
they're
put them in
saying.
a small space, they
And then with
hate
the
it.
paparazzi and the cameras and the lights and that sort of stuff, that
and I
really
think
was quite intense.
poor Chip would have been short of ventilation in that bag, so...
There are some holes at the bottom, but even so, it doesn't look like...
No, but he and she look so chic.
Poor Claudia.
They look so chic. I know, Steve, I'm
she
sorry.
made a fashion faux pas.
It is. I can see it's going to get her into trouble.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't like it. Don't like it.
Get Timmy a nice bag.
Timmy's got a lovely bag, yes, but he won't be going in it to be paraded in front of the newspapers.
Cindy, Boris Johnson, in his column today, has said, yes, he would sign up to fight for king and country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic Boris Johnson column for the Mail. You know, it's bouncy, it's patriotic, it's riven with history and peppered with his own personal history of his time during the Cadets, which he was kicked out of at the age of 18, actually, for not being good enough.
Yes.
And basically, he's reacting to this news that the US and the UK senior military officials are thinking the UK might have to start conscription at some point in the future if we go to war with Russia. Rishi Sunak has come out to say that's not going to happen. But, you know, frankly, we just don't know, do we? We just don't know. And so Boris just saying, sign me up, I'll be there.
And to be fair, and forgive me if you're a huge Boris Johnson fan, but he'd be a nightmare for the army. Nobody would want it. He'd be utterly hopeless.
He didn't even get the pandemic right, let alone trying to go to war for us.
No, it'd be no good.
I think realistically he's
too old anyway.
Old, exactly. He's probably too overweight as well, because the army has very strict guidelines on BMI.
But it's the centre sentiment he's trying to evoke here, isn't it? And actually, it's for the first time in weeks, it's really worth reading, isn't it? It's a very nice column. It's very funny. He tells really stupid stories about when he was in the CCF, the Combined Cadet Force, at school, and some of the things that they did wrong and how horrible the Sergeant Major was to them. But he said even that teaches you life lessons.
Yeah,
Sergeant Major was absolutely horrible. He made them clean the latrines until they sparkled, and then when they went to be, they went off somewhere. The Sergeant Major deliberately got a jar of peanut butter and spread it all over the loos, and then so when they were inspected by a more senior officer, he was saying, "What, you call this clean?" It was, and then apparently it was an in-joke. The officer bent down and actually picked it up the peanut butter with his finger and went,
No.
and one of the cadets fainted.
No.
So that's the sort of thing. That's why it's a very, very good read. It really
If
is.
I were on a Mail comment desk, I'd be quite glad that he's actually written, you know, a very juicy column instead of some of the ones that have been
dry.
Yeah.
Is that what we're paying his
If you want something juicy, you need a pineapple on your full English.
Good seg, Stephen.
Apparently, it was the staple part of the English full breakfast during the 16th and 17th century, and historians are saying we should bring it back on our full English breakfast, get rid of the mushrooms and tomatoes. You see, I've just about got my head round having pineapples on pizza, but I think pineapples with a full English...
See, I remember seeing this as a kid, though, up north.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah,
you grill it, apparently. You don't just bung it on raw. If you grill it, and of course then all the sugars come out.
I can kind of see
and
that.
It goes all lovely and crispy and caramelly on the top.
What you need is a bit of acid, I think, in really heavy, savoury meals. And so I can see that pineapple would provide that.
I think pineapples is already a part of our breakfast. Like, if you have a fruit breakfast style, it's already
who has
part
a fruit
of it.
breakfast?
I do, darling.
You do not. Don't tell lies.
Fruits and champagne. But apparently it was a sign of wealth in the 16th and 17th century.
Because, of course, it was a very exotic fruit.
Christopher Columbus discovered it in 1492, and then he brought it to Europe.
Well, there
Are
you go.
you telling me you don't regularly have pineapple on your pizza?
No.
Oh, I love pineapple
I do
on
too.
pizza.
Pineapple on anything, almost.
Yeah.
No.
I do like pineapple, though. I'm going to give it a go with the fry-up.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Get a margarita, pizza margarita with pineapple and sweet corn.
Oh
my God, Stephen, this is such a red flag.
Is it?
Yes,
And
that's an
mushrooms.
awful pizza choice.
Oh, I like,
Really?
I think so.
That sounds nice.
Sweet corn as well.
I love sweet corn.
No.
Oh, dear. Red
I think you
flag.
offended all your Italian viewers.
Oh, well, I don't. Well, never mind. Never mind. I can live with that. No, I love that.
I would give that a go. I think it sounds yummy.
I think we've got just about time, Cindy, to tell us about how working from home is destroying our social skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a leading kind of headhunting firm talking about how since the lockdown, so many people have stayed working from home, even the pandemic's over, and actually they just don't have the human-to-human relationships to be a mentor or to be trained or to build a company culture. And I think basically the pandemic was a big experiment in what working actually means. And on paper, you might think working means ticking off all your boxes and all your tasks. But actually, a company culture is incredibly important. So, you know, you can have an exceptional time like the pandemic and then you come back and rebuild that culture. But if you have stayed working from home, you know, companies like big law firms, where so many of them are still working from home majority of the time, they feel like their culture isn't being built.
Yeah.
There's no human-to-human interaction, especially for younger people first coming into the workplace. All you see is a Teams call.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is incredible what that does to the human personality.
I would agree. I think it's a real problem that we've got to deal with at some point. We've got to leave it there. Stephanie, Cindy, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Right now, shall we get the weather with Annie?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK. We're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 26th of January.
No, it's the
Today,
27th.
It's the what?
It's the 27th.
Oh, it is the 27th.
Remember, the 26th was yesterday, Australia Day.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was my niece's 21st birthday yesterday, so I should know.
You should know. Sorry about that. Yes, it is.
Did we say 26 last hour?
Don't know.
Probably did. I'm going to have to check it now.
Last time I was in there, wrong as well.
No, we'll blame them, not us, Peter.
Well, it's what it bloody says.
I
isn't it?
know. Well, there you go.
Shall we pretend it never happened?
Never happened. Good morning to you.
morning.
It is 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 27th of January. Today, the US government is set to station nuclear weapons at a British base as Boris Johnson vows to join the army if the country goes to war.
A New York court orders Donald Trump to pay $83 million to the writer E. Jean Carroll for defamation, and that's ahead of a Republican rally in Nevada.
The world remembers the millions of victims who suffered under Nazi persecution on Holocaust Memorial Day.
We must never forget. It's important to remember. It's only that way that we might be able to learn from the appalling genocides in the past.
Meanwhile, King Charles is doing well after undergoing treatment for an enlarged prostate.
Now, parents apparently in uproar after a school in Kent threatened to fine them for picking up their children late. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later on.
And Aidan is here with your sport.
Yes, indeed. Good morning. Liverpool Football Club have been rocked to the core by the planned departure of their manager Jurgen Klopp after 9 years at Anfield. We'll be hearing from the former England manager Sam Allardyce later this hour.
Oh, lovely stuff. And we're going to be getting a check on your weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. There's some Saharan dust in the air for the weekend, so there could be some quite nice sunrises and sunsets. But what's in store for the weather? Well, you can find out with me a little later on.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
It's weird in this job, isn't it, that you don't notice things like dates and times. You can quite happily say it's 6 o'clock at 8 o'clock and you don't really notice it.
No, but and also what day of the week it is half the time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What day of the week is it? Peter Spencer's here. You never know what day of the week it is, Peter.
No, exactly.
No. Anyway,
Exactly.
look, the reason Peter's here is we're going to talk to him about the United States stationing nuclear weapons in the UK for the first time in 15 years as tensions with Russia escalate.
Pentagon documents have revealed that RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk would host the warheads that are reportedly 3 times as powerful as the Hiroshima bomb.
Well, all this comes as Boris Johnson has vowed that he will fight for his country if, it's a very big if, thankfully, the UK goes to war.
So, Peter, it strikes me that the way this is being written about is there's shock horror, the US is going to put nuclear armaments in our country. But this has happened before. I mean, is it an age thing? I'm not even shocked by it.
I mean, I'm the same as you, that I'm used to having nuclear weapons, American nuclear weapons in this country, and so plus ça change, même chose. But what we're looking at, what is different, I mean, I pick up what the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps said a few days ago when he said, look, we're no longer living in a post-war era, but potentially a pre-war era. And that's to do...
Yeah, that sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It sounds really scary. And it's to do with the fact that Russia still trades as a democracy, but the reality is Putin is turning increasingly fascistic. He's reconstituted his economy on basically a war footing. And, of course, we have the Ukraine thing, and little by little it's percolating through that he didn't get what he wanted in Ukraine, which was a swift and decisive victory. So if nothing else, he might wish to save face a little bit later on, which is why there is the danger he might take a pop at another country at some point, possibly more closely aligned with, or even a member of NATO, in which case we're in a very different and a very scary ballgame.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're all heading, I hate to say it, but it's heading down that mutually assured destruction line, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, quite. And, but I mean, because there is another joker in the pack here, which I have to say, is Donald Trump himself. You know, it now looks increasingly a possibility that Donald Trump becomes the next president of the United States. He's the man who once said, hey, Putin's a great guy, which is... and you've got to remember that in the Second World War, for example, the Americans did not wish to become involved, and it wasn't until the Japanese were unwise enough to bomb Pearl Harbor that they finally got involved. And so what we're looking at on that side is a potentially volatile, I put it more strongly than that, volatile ethos within the United States. And, of course, the other factor in all this is the increasingly close ties between China and Russia and North Korea and Russia. So we heard years ago Ronald Reagan talked about an axis of evil. Well, we have another one on the way.
I tell you what I find interesting with all of this, and I do not have an answer to it, but Donald Trump is, should he get back into the White House, there's a potential that, I mean, he's either going to be so potentially dangerous with something like Russia that you think, well, he's just going to press the button. But actually, he's the only person who could possibly talk Putin out of it, isn't he?
I mean, in the quiet, the still hours of the night, I have my prayer that maybe he could do a deal with Putin. Who knows?
Or at least show some sort of act of friendship. I can imagine it's going to be one of the first things he does, actually, if he becomes president, is pop over to Moscow and shake hands with Putin. And isn't that quite an important thing to do, to at least try and show some sort of friendliness?
Oh, it would be immensely helpful. The only point that I'd make is that he is very clearly a very impulsive person. Last time he was the President of the United States, he didn't really understand how the levers worked. And so if he had some crazy idea, usually they managed to sort of whip the bit of paper off his desk so he never got any further with it. This time round, if he gets in again, he will understand very well how it works. So if he has some idea, wishes to put it into practice, bingo, it happens. It's volatile, that's my point.
This business of US nuclear weapons being back, basically, in our Air Force bases, isn't that quite a good thing? Because at least we are holding hands very firmly with the US.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it would... well, because remember, we have a Biden administration at present, and their policy clearly is to be rock solid with NATO. Just as I say, it might change later on in the year. In the meantime, of course, we have the head of the British Army saying, in effect, that we ought to double the size of the army, and we've had
well, thank heavens, Boris Johnson says he'll sign up.
Do you know, it's funny you should mention that, because, I mean, I was in the Officer Training Corps at my public school. I hated every second of it, the school and indeed the Corps. And I cannot say it exactly prepared me for charging over the top.
Two of my sons have been in CCF and absolutely loved it. Totally loved it.
Did they really?
I think 3 of them did, yeah.
Well, chacun son goût, eh?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It taught them a thing or two.
Oh, it certainly does that, yeah. Teaches you to never join the army, in my case, but of course...
Yeah, not in my son's case, actually. There you go.
No, it's an interesting one. But I tell you what, I mean, of course, he's a very unlikely candidate, and as I said, more Captain Mannering than anything else. However, it's showing the right attitude, isn't it?
Oh, yes, most certainly. It absolutely is, yeah, because, I mean, we had Downing Street a few days ago denying that we're going to introduce conscription, although there is an old axiom in our business, which is nothing's ever true till it's officially denied. But the thought of some sort of citizens' army, yeah, it is a runner, and the more support that got, the better.
OK, Peter, good to see you. Thank you.
Talking of Donald Trump, well, across the Atlantic, he has been ordered to pay more than £65.5 million in damages for defaming a columnist.
Yeah, she accused him of destroying her reputation. That's because he denied that he raped her 3 decades ago.
In response, Trump has said he fully disagrees with the verdicts and he will be appealing. He actually called it a Biden-directed witch hunt.
Let's talk to advisor to the Bush and Clinton administrations, Steve Gill. What do you reckon, Steve?
Good morning, and I don't care what day it is. I'm glad to be here.
Good.
Yeah, so what do you make of all of this? I mean, look, he's been ordered to pay this money, he denies it, he's going to appeal it, all the rest of it. None of that comes as a surprise. What is all this going to do to the Trump campaign?
I think this is the most outrageous abuse of justice in the history of American jurisprudence. There is no credibility behind the claims. E. Jean Carroll waited nearly 30 years to bring the claims when she was out on a book tour that wasn't going well, and plenty of evidence that would have exonerated Trump in this case, including some of her own interviews, one that was a creepy interview with a CNN host where she talked about rape being sexy and that it was a fun kind of thing, and then kind of devolved her voice into a sexy, deeper voice and told Anderson Cooper he was fascinating to talk to and she would like to talk more. I mean, this kind of stuff was kept from the jury. And a lot of other evidence was kept from the jury. And I think that this case is a partisan case with a partisan judge, a partisan jury. They actually changed the law in New York because her claims were barred by the statute of limitations to allow her a window to sue Donald Trump. So I don't think this is going to have any negative impact on him. I don't think ultimately it will survive appeal, and it shouldn't.
I don't know whether we've lost
it. No, it's
Steve.
there, still there.
It's still there. Oh, jolly good. It's an extraordinary amount of money as well, isn't it? Though I suppose he will appeal it, so he won't have to pay up straight away.
Yeah, it's interesting. She was fired as a columnist by a magazine she was working for after all this dispute with Trump came out. The magazine says it had nothing to do with the Trump dispute that she was having. She was a 76-year-old columnist writing about dating and and sex. And at some point, maybe she timed out, and that was the factor, not Donald Trump. And she was not making nearly the money that has now been assessed against him. There's no damage to her reputation. In fact, she's a lot more known now than she ever was before.
So here he's going to obviously start the appeal process. What other legal problems is he facing? I mean, it just seems to be one thing after another, doesn't it?
Well, and it seems like there's landmines in every one of these cases for the prosecutors. We have the case down in Georgia where they're accusing Trump and 18 co-defendants of involved in a conspiracy after the election to deny the results. And you just had the prosecutor get shown to have been having a relationship with the prosecutor she appointed and paying him hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's blown up in their face. So these cases keep blowing up in different ways, and I think this one will be the same.
And I'll tell you what worries me slightly, Steve, from what you said, is that, and it happens a lot with anything to do with Trump. You say it's a partisan judge, a partisan case, but you also say a partisan jury. If that is the case, if this is all true, that juries are partisan across the United States, well, that hardly bodes well for any prosecution, does it, when it comes to a politician who may or may not have done something wrong?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And keep in mind, this case and several of the other cases are in New York City, where Donald Trump lost the presidency by about 90% of the vote. Same thing in Atlanta, Georgia, where the other case is proceeding. It's a deeply blue Democrat city, so the base of the jury is going to come from a very partisan standpoint. And in the E. Jean Carroll case, the judge was actually keeping people off the jury who said they had voted for Trump. So they're stacking the deck, and we shouldn't be surprised at the results in that case. But it does, again, hurt the entire credibility of the American justice system and our courts.
Yeah,
Certainly does.
It does, yeah. OK, Steve, good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you guys. Have a good weekend.
I mean, it's hugely worrying if any politician, because politicians get taken to court for all sorts of reasons.
But if you can't trust even a verdict from a jury...
You've got to have confidence in what a jury says. That's the whole point of it, isn't it?
Mm.
So that worries me.
But when you watch movies about juries and the way they're selected, there are specialist firms that come in and advise on jury selection. It's an extraordinary business.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't know how different it is over here because I've never served on a jury or anything else.
No, me either.
So, anyway. Now, it's 7:15, 7:14 anyway, and today is World Holocaust Day, so it's a time to remember the millions who died during the Holocaust under Nazi persecution, as well as marking the genocides that followed in Cambodia, in Rwanda, in Bosnia and in Darfur.
Events are taking place right across the UK. And as our southwest of England reporter Jeff Moody explains, the commemoration is more poignant and, of course, relevant than ever before.
Children in Dorchester, lighting candles and remembering. The theme for this year's event, the fragility of freedom. It's a fragile concept and one that's inspired Dorchester's young to draw, to make models and to write poetry. The Mayor of Dorchester says the contribution of the young is vital.
We must never forget. It's important to remember. It's important to reflect, so digest what you see, and it's only that way that we might be able to learn from the appalling genocides in the past.
World Holocaust Day remembers atrocities across the world. Not only the slaughter of 6 million Jews, gypsies, disabled and gay people at the hands of the Nazis, but also the killing of 2 million in Cambodia under the communist regime of Pol Pot in the 1970s. Hundreds of thousands of deaths in Guatemala between 1960 and 1996. The genocide of up to 1 million Tutsi people in Rwanda in 1994, and the continued killing of the Darfuri people in Sudan. But in a week where acres of newsprint has been devoted to talk of a third world war and even conscription, Dorchester's MP Chris Loder believes the message of World Holocaust Day has never been as relevant as it is today.
I think what, for me, as a Member of Parliament, was quite unsettling was actually to see some of the terms and references here on the screen behind me a little earlier that are actually still being used today in some protests that happen in London. And that is very uncomfortable and I think is food for thought.
Events continue throughout the weekend with the lighting of candles, the saying of prayers, and the hope that by remembering and commemorating, we can prevent the atrocities of the past from ever being repeated. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, we're joined now by Chairman of the National Jewish Assembly, Gary Mond. What do you think about when you think today?
Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and it commemorates probably the biggest tragedy in the history of mankind, with more than 6 million Jews mass murdered in an industrial plan by Nazi Germany. And there's absolutely nothing that is comparable to it.
I was going to say, because obviously we've covered this all my career, every year, and it comes up, and I've talked to Holocaust survivors and all the rest of it. And what always comes up is that message, we must remember this, we must learn from this so that it doesn't happen again. Vitally important. And here we are in 2024, where anti-Semitism is on the rise. And I just find that absolutely extraordinary. People are openly being anti-Semitic.
Yes, it is horrendous. Number of points. Firstly, the education needs to be improved with regards to the Holocaust in schools. People need to understand what lay behind the Holocaust and what were the events that led up to the Holocaust in terms of the way Jews were persecuted in Nazi Germany and, of course, in the countries that Germany occupied during the war. And step by step, what led all the way to the gas chambers. There needs to be a better education there.
It's interesting you say that, because in some of the recent protest marches where people have actually been yelling anti-Semitic things, various journalists have gone up to those particular people and asked them about the Holocaust, and they didn't even know what it was.
Really?
Yes.
This is a savage indictment on our education system. Absolutely horrendous. And if they actually don't know what the Holocaust is, what hope is there for preventing similar events in the future? Heaven forbid.
They were shouting from the river to the sea, and one journalist went up to them and said, which river and what sea? And they didn't know. So they're just yelling hateful things just because they want to be hateful, I suppose. They don't even know the geography or the history.
And what is also behind is the horrendous levels of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism tends to morph over the generations as to how it features. Firstly, we have the far-right anti-Semitism, which is on the decline compared to what it used to be. We also have far left-wing anti-Semitism, for which the Corbyn years will be most remembered. But thirdly, there is fundamentalist Islamic anti-Semitism, where religion is used to indoctrinate many, many young people into hating Jews and wanting to kill Jews. And that is absolutely horrendous.
Why is it that one thing I've never understood, if you take, what we see in the UK and what we've seen in the UK for a long time, is a stereotype. The stereotyping of Jewish people and the fact that some people I've met actually who just have this constant suspicion, and I struggle to understand how and why that even started, never mind how it can still exist today.
The way it started was the stereotyping is to generalise about Jews, to say that Jews all think the same way and all have a common agenda.
Which we know it doesn't apply to anybody.
The reality is there are Jews who are conservatives, Jews who are socialists, Jews who take all sorts of political views, have got all sorts of interests, and heaven knows, tremendous numbers of different opinions about every subject under the sun.
Maureen Lipman, Dame Maureen Lipman, has said she doesn't feel safe being a Jew. She said, there's nowhere in the UK where I feel safe anymore, which is a terrible thing. Would you agree with her?
Tragically, to a considerable extent, I do. We're seeing Jews being persecuted. I think persecuted is probably not too strong a word. In the professions, in schools, in hospitals, in many different areas of life. I think this began with the case of Danielle Grayman. I don't know if you remember her. A year or two ago, she was the Leeds University student whose essays were marked down because she expressed pro-Israel sentiments. She took Leeds University to court and won. This was before the war began. And I think there may well be a number of similar situations happening in the coming year where some Jews will say, I have had enough. I need to get some legal reimbursement for what has happened to me.
I say it's just a shocking indictment. We should be in a situation where we're talking about, remembering the horrors, but commenting how the world is a better place.
Yes.
And
it's like we're going
just going in reverse.
Yes, the world is not a better place, tragically.
It's not.
So what can we do about it? I mean, you said better education, but, show me some there will be some teachers who
I think there needs to be
that.
stronger... Well, those teachers should be fired if they refuse to teach the Holocaust properly and according to what actually really happened during the Holocaust years. And the other thing that can be done better is a proper enforcement of the law against Jew haters. And by the way, I prefer the word Jew hater to anti-Semite because it is much more specific and much easier to comprehend.
Yes, yeah, that's a very valid point. It's interesting because, I wouldn't have felt comfortable saying that because I would wonder if it was the right thing to say.
Perfectly OK, perfectly acceptable. You can use the two words almost interchangeably, but I actually personally prefer Jew hater and Jew hatred to be quite emphatic about the matter.
But in that sense, though, what I'm intrigued by, would you then argue that it is... Because I'm very anti-hate, actually. I don't think it's a good, healthy thing for anyone to hate.
I agree completely.
But so you would apply that to all people of society, would you, that we shouldn't hate anybody?
Of course we shouldn't hate anybody. We should respect each other. We should respect each other's religions, each other's races, each other's interests in life, and try to understand them. Interfaith work has made efforts in this direction over the years, but sadly, it hasn't succeeded completely because of what we're seeing today, and particularly the relationships between the Jewish communities and the Muslim communities have suffered terribly.
Yeah.
And that's because there's not enough comprehension about what it is to be Jewish and how important Israel is to the fibre and to the basis of belief of the Jewish community in the UK.
Gary, it's a real pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And it's just edging its way towards 7:24. Let's catch up with the weather now. Here's Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
Thanks very much.
Please.
Yeah.
14 degrees, though, sounds all right.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Not too bad for this time of year. We were talking earlier about the fact that you should be having a slice of grilled pineapple with your full English breakfast.
Yes, apparently.
Now, Simon puts it very well. Says, pineapple is traditionally served with gammon, so why not with a fry-up?
Exactly. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Do you have pineapple with your breakfast? Maybe as you're watching us now. Love to hear from you.
It should be compulsory on pizzas, I should think. It's as compulsory as cheese I'll get you going. Now we've got the sport heading away from one manager to another. We're going to be talking to Sam Allardyce about what Klopp, or the lack of Klopp, is going to mean to the Premier League. This is Breakfast.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, many of us growing up would have heard the stories from parents and grandparents who lived through the war, the last big war. Well, stories of a time gone by, but stories that very sadly may come again.
Yeah, and should teach us too. With the US returning nuclear weapons to British soil and wars, of course, flaring up from Ukraine through the Middle East and beyond, war could very well be a reality. Maybe not in Britain, but for Britain.
Oh. It's not what you need, is it? So what's it like living through conflict? Well, joining us in the studio is Paul Minter, who served in the Household Cavalry and did several tours, and also from Ukraine, People's Deputy and MP, Inna Sovsun. Good to see you both this morning. Inna, can we start with you? Because obviously what the people of Ukraine are going through right now is the absolute horror of war, how does it shape a people, especially when you're a couple of years in, as you are now?
Well, I understand it is very difficult to imagine what it means to live through war. And if anyone would have asked me about that 2 years ago, I would not be able to explain what that is. Well, I will try to give a feeling of what that is to your audience here. I have a son. His name is Martin. He's 11 years old. He goes to school over here in Kyiv. And he considers it to be a good day when there was no air raid alert and when he didn't have to go to the bomb shelter. And he's a lucky one because his school does have a bomb shelter inside the school itself. But multiple other schools, they just don't have the space in the school to get all the kids there. So there are unfortunately many schools where kids go to school like every other week. And every other week, the second week, they would stay home and study online just because the bomb shelter capacity in the individual school is not big enough to fit in all the kids in the school. And that is for those like us who are living here in Kyiv. But if you go to my native city of Kharkiv, the situation over there is so much worse. Kids over there who are still staying in Kharkiv, was a big city, it was over 1 million people living there. Kids over there who stay with their parents, they go to schools in the underground. They arranged classes in the underground because it's just not safe to be anywhere else in the city. So that is the daily reality for us here.
Okay, Inna, thank you for that. I was just going to say, Paul, it's a very different scenario, isn't it, for those people, civilians who are living through conflict and all that entails. But then you look at the military side and people like yourself who've been actively involved in conflict. And we can't underestimate, can we, the horror of war and what people who've been in your position actually go through.
Yes, absolutely. It's very different for everyone involved, whether you're a soldier on either side or if you're a civilian. The comprehension or understanding of what each go through is very difficult. But as a soldier, it's very different from a civilian who is just thrown into that, and it's a complete shock. For us, we joined a service, an organisation to go out and do these sorts of things, go around the world and peacekeep and help with humanitarian aid and war. And we trained very highly for that. But one thing is, what you can't comprehend or you can't train for is the amount of high alertness, the constant barrage of fighting, and the atrocities that you come across whilst you're out there. And it is constant, it's every single day.
Yes, I imagine if you're trained, as you were, you're trained to do a job, but it doesn't get you away from the fact that it's relentless if you're in a war zone, isn't it? It's the sound, it's the hearing things going off and trying to judge where they are. That gets to you, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It can't not. You know, any sort of trauma can happen to someone within a few seconds. But when you're elongating that trauma, which is what war is, no matter how you perceive it, it is trauma. When you elongate that for 5, 6, 7, 9 months at a time, over and over again, it is going to have some sort of consequences on you. But we all joined up for that reason. We all want to help people. We all feel very proud of what we do. And it's a sacrifice that us soldiers, airmen, everyone else, that they make initially. They make that sacrifice and they know that consequences may come from that.
A final thought, Inna, from you on this one. Do you maintain, and your family, and indeed the civilians within Ukraine, do you still maintain hope? Is that important?
Well, it is very difficult because it is like the war itself has been dragging on for 10 years. The big scale war has lasted for 2 years, but the war itself is 10 years. And one thing that I keep in my mind, my son is 11 now. When the war started in 2014, he was a year and a half. So I don't want this to drag on up until he will be 18 and he will be drafted to serve. That is my strongest wish. And that is what we are fighting for. It is extremely difficult for me. I am a civilian. I live in Kyiv, but my partner, my loved one, is on the front line. And that is the reality that is dragging on me every second. Every second I have to worry about him surviving what he is going through and understanding that other colleague here said that he will not be the same when he comes back after this war. There is hope, just because we cannot lose hope, because there are kids that we are doing this for. There is, and then there is the scary reality of losing. We cannot afford this to happen. Russia coming over here, taking over Ukraine is not something that is acceptable. Thus, we have to continue.
Yeah, it is terrible to think that your son has spent his whole childhood only knowing war, isn't it? Inna, Paul, thank you so much.
Yeah, really good to talk to you both this morning. OK, let's crack on with Aidan McGee. Should we? Good morning, good morning.
Good morning to you both.
Should we?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, Jurgen Klopp came out yesterday. It was a surprise announcement from Liverpool. They trailed it on social media, a pre-recorded interview.
Was it a total shock to you?
Oh, without doubt, without doubt. I mean, I just couldn't see. I mean, it does tend to happen sometimes. We didn't expect Arsene Wenger to go. We didn't expect Sir Alex Ferguson to go. But I want to bring in a very special guest now this morning, none other than the former England manager, Sam Allardyce, a good friend of mine as well. Sam, good morning to you. Welcome to GB News. Your reaction, first of all, when you heard the news yesterday, because it was a big surprise, to say the least.
As a double, triple check, and just to make sure that it wasn't just a hoax, you know. I think that particularly where Liverpool are top of the league, and the fact that they're going so well, and I would have thought that when listening to the news and checking on the news and finding out that it's actually going to happen, of course it's been November since he notified the board that he was leaving, apparently. And I think that the club have tried to keep it quiet for as long as they can, but somebody somewhere has obviously leaked it out, and he's come clean on it. And it is a big blow for Liverpool fans across the country, and a big blow for the board of directors to actually replace such a very good person, a great character, and a very good man.
Sam, what's he like as a bloke? I remember when you first had a run-in with him, you called him a soft German because you accused him of a bad tackle. What's he like as a person, as a personality? Did you patch things up with him?
Oh, no, there's no problem with that. I think that as a personality, I've always got on with him, you know, and I think that while we have our battles and trials and tribulations in the game of football, but after that, it's generally forgotten about. I think I find his sense of humour to be particularly pleasing, and his character and the way he holds himself, and of course the way he produces on public areas and what he does in the news and the media. And I think everybody enjoys listening to him, myself included. So it'll be a big miss for everybody in the Premier League and everybody in this country. But certainly Liverpool, big job, who do you replace him with?
Sam,
look at that smile and those new teeth. I mean, they're not bad, are they?
Sam, give us an idea, an insight into just the extent to which these top jobs consume the lives of guys like yourself, the effect it has on your family and so forth.
Oh, massive. I mean, your family suffers most. I think that there's often times when you're so absorbed in the game and so absorbed with what goes on in the game that your wife can be talking to you and you haven't heard a word she said for the last 10 minutes. And obviously that doesn't go down well sometimes. Like, I mean, you do get lost and consumed completely 24/7 in this job, particularly in the Premier League. And I think that obviously when you see the amount of people that watch the game and the amount of people that comment on the game, when you're on that touchline, anything goes against you, you think's unjust. It's very difficult to control yourself. And of course, when you're winning, it's very important to show your emotion, that you are so pleased for yourself, for your staff, for the team and for the fans. And I think that he shows that very, very well. He likes to go on the pitch and punch his chest for the Liverpool fans. I think they've adored that over the years. And we've all enjoyed watching him manage and what he's done for Liverpool in 9 years. I was quite shocked. It was actually 9 years now. So, yeah, he'll be missed, and Liverpool need to replace him. It's the most difficult job they've faced for a long time.
Sam, I remember you saying to me years ago that your wife brought up your kids because you were just so engaged with the job. I mean, how important is it to get back to normal family life for guys like you and guys like Jurgen Klopp, of course?
Well, I think you've got to choose. If you're going to stay in this game a long time, one, you've got to be a winner. Two, you've got to be able to understand people's feelings and people's religions, of course. And I think that then you've got to get the best out of players by the way you run the football club. In the background, your family is a support system. The support system when you go home and you're feeling down and picking you up and making you try and forget the trials and tribulations of football for a while. I think it's a huge threat on your health. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And that's why the LMA have clinics all over the country for you to visit to keep on top of your health. We're very good at looking after players, but sometimes not so good at looking after ourselves. And I think that you see the amount of... In fact, I'm quite lucky, you know. I'm not Snow White like most managers are. You can see most managers come into the game with a jet black hair, and within 3 or 4 years, the silver foxes, you know. And I think that shows the pressure on management today.
Sam, just quickly before we go, what does this do for the title race? Does some initiative get handed to Man City and Arsenal at this stage?
No, it boosts Liverpool's chances of winning because everybody at the football club and every player needs to step up and see Jurgen go out on a very, very big high, as Sir Alex Ferguson did. I think that's 11 years ago now. So I think everybody will lift and try and see that Jurgen goes on a great high by certainly winning something this season.
Sam, great to hear from you this morning. Thanks for all your insights into the career of Jurgen Klopp.
It's a pleasure.
At Liverpool.
Get me up
Thanks
a bit
so much.
later next time, will you?
Sorry, say it again.
Thank you.
I'll make it once.
Did you say a bit later?
Get me up a bit later.
Yeah, sorry, Sam. Sorry, Sam.
Sorry.
All right, Aidan, thanks very much indeed. We've got the papers heading away in just a moment.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Should we have a look at what's in the papers this morning?
Yes.
With assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, and showbiz reporter extraordinaire.
Lovely to see you both again, yeah. And, of course, we've been marking World Holocaust Day. You've been having a look at that, Stephanie, in the papers.
Yeah, it's just today's the 79th anniversary of it. And, it's still... I can't believe that this actually happened in the world's history, like the largest genocide in the history of mankind, like 6 million Jews. And I think it's so relevant each year to mark these kind of days because it's so easy to forget how far we have come as a world, as mankind, and how far we still have to go in that sense, which makes it quite
Well, that's what the Holocaust Memorial Day is all about, is sort of trying to learn, remind ourselves of the terrible things that happened so they can't get repeated.
Yeah, and it's just... the theme for this year is the fragility of freedom, and I think that's something we can all be ignorant about and how often we take that for granted. So I think it is good that these days are spoken about, whatever your opinion is. I think it's good just to have a moment of just thinking about it.
I just think in a way, I think Holocaust Memorial Day should be more for people who are not Jewish, because the Jewish people will not forget.
No, they'll never forget.
They'll never forget. But it's the rest of us that need to remember.
It's the commemoration, it's the education as well, because the further we get away from living memory of the Holocaust, the more people will start to go into denialism, they start to question, or they don't even know about it. And what's concerning is that since October 7th, the Hamas attacks, that actually anti-Semitic attacks have gone up, not down. And, Stephanie was saying that how much mankind has come, but we also are capable of going backwards.
Yeah.
And we're slipping backwards right now with anti-Semitism and with racism of many different sorts. And so that's particularly makes this a commemoration day quite a bittersweet one, really, I think. There are these Holocaust survivors in Israel now whose families were killed or held hostage in the October 7th attacks. And it's just... it's terribly tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when you hear those stories from people whose families have actually been impacted by the Holocaust, it becomes a lot more realer that the fact that this pain and trauma is still handed from generation to generation.
Yeah, it's just so upsetting, the whole thing, really, where we are at the moment. Can we talk, Cindy, about tobacco?
Yes.
Because this is in the Times this morning. Smoking is cool again.
Smoking is cool again. Now, Stephen, I'm quite split on this story, actually, because I do think smoking looks pretty cool. And basically what's happening... Yeah, I do.
See, that's a very non-PC thing to say, I guess.
Oh, on GB News.
Well, no.
And what this Smoke-Free Media, this organisation that tracks public representation of smoking, has found is that Hollywood also thinks smoking is cool again, and that actually in films that's come out in the last year, like Saltburn, like Oppenheimer, there were over 100 scenes of smoking in each of those films.
Well, that's not surprising because they're period movies.
Exactly.
And I think nothing sums up the sort of 40s and 50s more than the constant smoke.
Yeah, Saltburn is actually set in 2006/7, but actually its director has said that she deliberately did that because that was just before indoor smoking was banned in the UK. So basically, you know, this organisation is obviously very concerned because it has been linked to people actually taking up smoking more because people like me are impressionable.
Don't you think the image of somebody with a cigarette sort of hanging out off their lip and smoke and the horrible stench of smoke, don't you find that repulsive image?
He looks so handsome.
Oh.
No,
Come
he doesn't.
on. I don't know if the producers... Come on. No? OK, well, that's great. That means that it's not working. So we can have more representation of smoking in more...
I'm a little bit like you. I sort of think the idea of you know, a cigarette in a dark, sleazy jazz joint with a martini and all that. There's something quite romantic about that.
I think so. But that doesn't mean, you know, you have to... We can separate art from life, right? I mean, we're all mature enough to do that, I think.
I think the image itself is just horrible.
I used to be a former smoker, but now I can't stand it. I can't take the smell of it. Everything about it I just find repulsive.
Me
now,
too.
yes, I used to be a former smoker, Stephen.
Did you?
Yeah. More of a social smoker. I think that's where I was quite, you know, you just be out, have a glass of champagne, and it just seems natural to have a cigarette in my hand, but now I can't take it anymore.
No.
OK.
It's horrible.
Vile.
Tell us what J.K. Rowling's been doing, because this is astonishing.
Oh, she is among the celebrities. It's time for the rich and famous to pay up and pay their taxes. She is among the top earners in this country, and today, well, this month, she'll be paying £40 million worth of taxes.
40 million?
Oh my goodness.
No concept.
How much is she making?
Oh, that is a lot of money right there. And Ed Sheeran, he'll be paying £36 million
in tax.
Yeah, but the second biggest taxpayer is Bernie Ecclestone. Obviously, he's had a long-running investigation. But guess, how much would you guys think he's paying?
Bernie?
Yeah.
Don't know. Oh, go on.
£652 million.
What?
But is that due to... Is that
the
back
18,
taxes?
Yeah, back taxes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because he didn't pay for almost 18... Well, apparently he didn't pay for almost 18 years. But all that money...
So is he the second
Yeah,
biggest?
he's the second on the list.
Who's the first, then?
It's a hotel.
It's a Russian tech baron called Alex Gerko, and I can't remember exactly how much he's paid, but he's paid more tax than Bernie Ecclestone.
In Britain?
Yeah.
In Britain, yeah.
Well,
And
I'll tell you what,
renounced his Russian nationality.
Couldn't you build a few hospitals from all of that stuff?
Yeah. What happens to that money?
Well,
That's
goes into the
Goes into the pot. Yeah, it just goes into the pot.
Jeremy Hunt will be happy with the
But I
will be happy.
I think analysts were actually saying that the super rich have paid less this year than they did before. Because actually they all have companies and company profits have been depressed because, you know, it's a bad economic situation, so they pay less corporation tax. But it's the rest of us paying income tax that because of inflation we've been dragged up a tax bracket. So what's actually happened in the last year is that even though these people are paying so much money, they're paying less relatively, and it's us who are paying more through income tax.
That's the argument, but that's actually the argument for lower taxes in the higher tax bands.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Lower business, because then they don't try and, you know...
Go somewhere.
Go somewhere or filter it away with an account. They pay more. The tax take goes up with all that stuff. Politically, it doesn't look good. That's the trouble. Oh, dear. All right, ladies, well, on that weird note, I don't know whether to feel good now or bad about my tax bill. I'm getting away with not paying very much compared to those people.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this morning. Loads of you getting in touch about conscription this morning. Viv is outraged that they should hint at conscription for our young boys and girls. Yeah, it's not going down very well.
They're all snowflakes.
Here's the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 27th of January. Today, the US government set to station nuclear weapons at a British base. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has vowed to join the army if the country goes to war.
A New York court orders Donald Trump to pay $83 million to the writer E. Jean Carroll for defamation ahead of a Republican rally in Nevada.
The world remembers the millions of victims who suffered under Nazi persecution on Holocaust Memorial Day.
And King Charles is doing well, apparently, after undergoing treatment for an enlarged prostate.
We're going to be talking about an uproar at a school in Kent as parents are threatened with fines if they pick their children up late.
And Aidan McGee is here with your sport.
Yes, indeed. It's a very big weekend of sport too as Liverpool contemplate life without Jurgen Klopp after 9 years at the helm. Manchester City have their eyes set on another treble and it's finals weekend at the Aussie Open Tennis.
Also coming up for you, the weather forecast with Annie.
Good morning. There's some Saharan dust in the air for the weekend, so there could be some quite nice sunrises and sunsets. But what's in store for the weather? Well, you can find out with me a little later on.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I'll tell you what, in terms of conscription, heck, there's a lot of you saying you do, and I'm intrigued that it's an older generation, which I think says a lot about this
Who
country.
are saying yes.
Yeah, Joe in Dorset says, if we have to rely on today's generation, we're in trouble. I'm 60 years old and I'd join up tomorrow. I would defend this country, no question.
And Kerry in Shropshire, morning Kerry, says, I'd sign up to do whatever I could. I'm 70 years old, and while I was not around for previous wars or conscription, I do value what my parents, aunts and uncles did when they served for us.
Frank says, years ago I would have gone to war to defend my country, but today, with so many people in it that actually hate all we stand for, I don't think I would. Oh, that's an interesting point.
It is.
There is a lack of patriotic sentiment in the country, I think.
And Steve says, this is an interesting one, how about conscripting young criminals as an option rather than prison? He said, I'm not saying all would be suitable, but for some it might actually benefit them.
Yeah, it could well do. I don't know quite how to work it out, but for a lot of people it might get them on the right track.
Yeah, give them a bit of discipline and training.
Yeah, not a bad idea. Anyway, all that because of Boris Johnson, we'll tell you about in a second, but it's all sort of linked to the United States. And the idea that we are under more threat now than we have been for a long time, and the US has now said that it's going to station nuclear weapons in the UK for the first time in 15 years, all that linked to tensions with Russia.
This has come out because there are Pentagon documents that say that RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk would host the warheads, and they are a very, very strong... I mean, they're not like the Hiroshima bomb anymore, which was destructive enough. They're 3 times more powerful.
Meanwhile, when it comes to conscription, well... a lot of young people may not like the idea of signing up. Indeed, the Prime Minister has said it isn't going to happen anyway. But Boris Johnson has said if it was necessary, he would fight for his country.
Well, Peter Spencer, the political commentator, joins us now. And you can have a little sort of giggle about Boris Johnson. And indeed, his column today in the Mail is very amusing. But the sentiment is quite serious, isn't it? He's saying... You know, yeah, I'd fight for king and country. Why not you?
Has to be said that Boris Johnson is pretty good at talking the talk. Whether he'd actually walk the walk is altogether another matter.
I think he would if he were younger, don't you? I think the sentiment is strong.
Well, all things are possible, who knows? But I mean, when it comes to... I mean, yes, we note the point that Downing Street has had to deny the fact that it is contemplating conscription, but at the same time we had the head of the British Army saying, look, we need to effectively double it in size. Now, of course, the military top brass always bang the drum for spending in their department, but quite clearly, we are living in a more volatile situation than we have been for a very long time indeed. I mean, it's been said that, you know, the baby boomers, that's people like me, were the lucky ones in that we've had this long, long period from the Second World War until potentially now or the near future when there hasn't been, there's been lots of wars all over the place, but there hasn't been a biggie in Europe. So we've sort of felt, we've accepted peace as being as being the norm. But it might not be. And, you know...
Well, the fact is, as you said, baby boomers, our parents fought in the war, and it may well be that our children have to.
Yes, I mean, that is the fear. Although I would make the point that it's all about Putin. And, I mean, the extraordinary thing about that man is that when he first became the president of Russia, he was quite a Western-friendly, he was quite a cool dude, yeah? But then the point also has to be made that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and he's turned into this monster, for which I would argue that probably the very first and wisest step would be to make good and sure he does not win in Ukraine, because that would sort of effectively put him back in his box. And what we've seen, particularly with the problem in the Middle East, that attention has kind of wavered away from the Ukrainian situation, and you know, the weapons that have been promised haven't necessarily been delivered, and it's all slowed down. It's all got a bit, oh yeah, well, whatever. But the fact is, it is absolutely essential that we make good and sure, no matter how much it costs, that Russia loses that war.
But it begs the question then, why has it been deemed necessary for the US to move nuclear weapons back over here? Is it a show of force rather than anything else? Because, I mean, if we were going to launch a nuclear strike, and God forbid we ever do, it's not as if we haven't got weapons here of our own.
Very true, but yes, I think it is clearly designed as a signal, as an early warning signal to President Putin, which is the fact, look, you know, if you want to play the game, we can too, and we can do it. We've got, you know, we can do it every word as powerfully as you can, so just suck it up, man. And I mean, his immediate response is, of course, this is an escalation. Well, I mean, you know, you can always rely on Putin. Whatever he says, the reverse is the case.
Yeah.
And it's important, isn't it, to also show that we are hand in hand with the Americans.
Yes, indeed so. And there, of course, that opens another whole can of worms because of the fact we have a Biden administration at present, but by the end of this year, it is quite within the bounds of possibility we'll have a Trump administration, which will be very much harder to predict. I mean, you look at his track record, and he's facing, I think, about 90 different criminal charges or whatever. And indeed, he's just had to shell out for this woman that he defamed. What would he do when he was in office? Would he stand foursquare behind NATO, or would he just turn his back? I mean, you've got to remember that, you know, at the end of in the Second World War, the Americans didn't get involved until the Japanese blew up Pearl Harbor. So, you know, I mean, from their point of view, I can see they're thinking, look, if these guys in Europe want to squabble, that's their problem, not ours.
Yeah. OK, Peter, thanks very much indeed. Well, talking, as Peter mentioned, Donald Trump is in hot water because he has been ordered to pay $83 million, of those, £65.5 million in damages for defaming former columnist E. Jean Carroll.
Now, she accused him of destroying her reputation after he denied that he allegedly raped her nearly 3 decades ago.
Well, Mr. Trump said he fully disagrees with the verdicts and will be appealing, calling it a Biden-directed witch hunt.
So we're now joined by a former Trump associate. Well, I think still a Trump associate, because you were at dinner on Christmas Eve, I think, at Mar-a-Lago. Roger Gewolb, morning.
Good morning.
This is an astonishingly huge amount of money, but is it going to stop him in his tracks?
No, not at all. I mean, it's 10 times more what she asked for in her lawsuit. It is, America is divided as we are, and this is the other side meting out punishment and trying to stop him, but it's not going to stop him. There have been all sorts of articles recently written about Ms. Carroll, that she has accused quite a few men of raping her, that evidence wasn't allowed to be introduced at the trial before. All kinds of stories about her appearing, clips about her appearing on CNN saying rape is sexy, and all sorts of very strange...
He wasn't charged with rape. That wasn't about the rape or the alleged rape. This is about him calling her a liar.
Well, no. It's last year is when that happened, and this is about being called a liar and defamation. And yesterday's judgment really was only about the level of damages. And it's quite ridiculous. It's the same as what they did to Giuliani, you know, finding him $150 million. Litigation is quite different in the United States than here.
Well, it's political.
It's political. The first thing you do in America is throw your lawyer at somebody. Here, we have litigation, particularly criminal litigation. People go, oh my God, you know, this is really... It's taken rather more lightly there. And of course, in the other cases, this is a civil case, but in the others, those are criminal charges, and they have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And, you know, everybody feels, well, pretty much everybody feels there's enough evidence out there about the election and other things that it would be very hard for a jury to find beyond a reasonable doubt, unless you're in a big, typically Democratic city, which is, you know, very left, as most American Democratic cities are.
Can I ask you about what Peter was talking about?
Sure.
Because this idea that, I mean, heaven knows what's happening with Putin, and the idea that Trump, if he gets back into the White House, is unpredictable. I think that's a valid point. But could we see a situation where someone like Trump would actually take himself off to Moscow, cozy up to Putin a little bit in order to calm this down? Or is he more likely to be more threatening?
Well, I think there's two things you're raising there. The first is his unpredictability. Now, I don't know him well, but I've met him a few times. He is certainly not unpredictable. I think he creates a persona to play to some of his electorate, but he's as sharp as a 50-year-old. He's very strategic, very intelligent, not somebody to mess with, that's for sure. I don't see him unpredictably hitting buttons, or he's too smart for that. And yeah, he might very well go speak to Putin and have a man-to-man conversation, two tough guys, and say, you know, you better be careful, mate. That's very possible.
And what about these nuclear warheads being brought, the American nuclear warheads being brought back to Britain? I mean, is he more likely to reverse that whole idea and just pull them back and say, we are not the world's police? Because he said that before, hasn't he?
He has said that before, but I don't see that happening, and I agree with what you and Peter have said, that I think they were brought here as a statement, you know, not to mess with us, and that if you want to play this game, we can play this game, just like the destroyers that were brought over. No, I think that if Putin were to escalate this, Trump would be probably, among all the possible candidates for president, the best solution that we could have. I was in America, as I say, and met with him recently, and spoke to a number of geopolitical experts, both on the Biden side and the Trump side, and they were all unanimously agreed, these serious geopolitical people, that Putin is behind all of this, that he's orchestrating Iran, China, Hezbollah, Hamas, the whole thing, because, number one, obviously he wants to restore Mother Russia to her former glory, and number two, as he has stated, he wants to rid the West of its, quote, satanic, unquote, ways. So he really is aligned with the Iranian mullahs in that, strangely enough.
It's a very odd thing to say, isn't it? Roger, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, it's steaming its way towards 14 minutes past 8. Let's catch up with the weather now. Here's Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
It's astonishing how the weather can change so fast.
I know.
This time last week, what was it? All wind and rain and horrible cold
-6
temperatures.
and all that sort of thing. And now
it's 14 and mild.
It's crazy.
Make the most of it, I suppose.
Well, yes, we better have, because who knows how long it'll last. Now, it is 8:15. Good morning to you. Today is World Holocaust Memorial Day, a time to remember the millions who died during the Holocaust under Nazi persecution, as well as commemorating or remembering the genocides that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur.
Founder and artistic director for Voices of the Holocaust is with us now, Kate Hollis. It's a beautiful title, actually, for your organisation, Voices from the Holocaust, because they're the voices we should be thinking of today, aren't they?
Indeed, indeed. And
who do you think of when you think of today? Are there particular people?
I mean, you know, we're here to commemorate and memorialise over 6 million Jewish people who were murdered simply for being Jewish. You know, when factories were built simply to murder people as efficiently as possible.
I mean, this is the problem. It is almost... I mean, even for people like me who were brought up being taught about it, it is almost beyond belief. And I worry slightly if a younger generation who are even further removed, it really is just beyond belief now. The absolute horrors of the Holocaust.
And that's the grave danger. That's what our charity was tasked with addressing. You know, people like Susan Pollock, Ziggy Schipper, so many survivors have dedicated decades of their life to retelling some of the most atrocious stories that you could imagine. And they've relived those in schools day in, day out to help educate young people. And they are all too acutely aware that that time is limited. I remember when I dropped Susan back at her house after an event that we were doing in a school, and she said, Kate, when are you going to tell my story? Because I'm not going to be able to tell it forever.
Well, that's important, isn't it?
So to keep survivors' stories ever present in classrooms is our mission.
So how do you do that then? Is it about actually recording these people and actually hearing the voice of these people?
So we're a theatre and education charity. And we have this exquisite medium of theatre which acts as a surrogate human voice for survivors' testimonies. So in the case of our current play, Kindness, we initially spent 8-10 hours, I think, with Susan recording her telling her story. It was a 2.5-year process, and we wove a number of other survivors' testimonies into that play.
And what age group is that designed to teach?
Kindness, our current play, secondary school students.
Because how do you do it without terrifying them?
And that's the challenge. You know, I'm often asked to go and see plays about the Holocaust, and what Voices does is very different. And it's a sensitive, and it's interesting because until you see a Voices play, it's hard to explain quite how we engage and how we balance the emotional engagement that young people have through the actors speaking on behalf of survivors, with the cognition, with the processing of what we call springboards towards understanding. So our pieces of theatre aren't education per se, but they are a journey towards knowledge and understanding.
A sort of thought-provoking process.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
And question-provoking.
How difficult is it, do you think, now under the current circumstances, where there is a rising anti-Semitic sentiment, which I would imagine must be visible amongst school pupils as much as the rest of society?
We've had schools cancel.
Really?
We are.
When you're talking about the Holocaust?
Yeah. And it
What reasons
startles
do they give, or do they not give reasons?
I mean, we're here to talk about Holocaust Memorial Day, and I'm loath to divert from that. But yeah, it's deeply disturbing. The rise in anti-Semitism is terrifying. You know, Ziggy's message for his entire life, bless him, he passed it just over a year ago. And his message for decades was hope and not hate. Susan's is that kindness should be the legacy of the Holocaust, and yet the divisions and the threat that Jewish people feel today is tremendous. And when senior leaderships in some schools are turning their back for fear that somehow Holocaust education is now political, it's frightening. It's deeply concerning.
It's history and it happened, and it's important that they know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and our mission becomes ever more important. So I would like to think these times will pass, but at the moment the landscape is worrying. For years, the Holocaust was the single only subject that the government insisted was on the national curriculum. But increasingly, we're finding with schools under pressure for time and for exam results, Holocaust education is not being collapsed necessarily in schools, but certainly being constricted. At these times, Holocaust education becomes ever more important.
Yeah, doesn't it just? Well, on this Holocaust Memorial Day, hope not hate is a good message for us all to have, I think. Kate, good to see you.
Lovely to see you, thank you.
Well, we'll take a break now, but coming up, should parents be fined for being late picking their kids up from school? We'll debate that in just a few moments.
Yes, and we've got sport with a Liverpool fan and former player, Mickey Quinn.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 8:26 now. Should parents be fined for dropping their kids off to school late? I thought it was about picking them up late.
I thought it was about picking them up late.
Anyway,
We're
parents
fine.
are fuming after one school in Kent brought in new rules this week.
You can sort of start to understand why, but is it a bit much? Parents are going to be fined £1 for every 5 minutes they're late. And they've said they would, apparently the school said they would even call social services if the kids aren't collected by 4 p.m. because school finishes at 3:30. It's a bit strict.
Let's talk to a blogger and mum, Emma Bradley, and a former head teacher and chairman for the Campaign for Real Education, Chris McGovern. Good morning to you both. Emma, let's start with you. What do you make of all of this?
It's just not on. Parents are under enough pressure as it is. And I think finding parents for their children being late to school in the mornings or a few minutes late being picked up isn't solving any of the problems. So for me, it's a hard no.
Chris, what do you think? I mean, having been a former head teacher, I mean, is this a real problem, actually, that you feel you're being taken advantage of because parents just are always late?
It wasn't a problem for me, I have to say. Look, schools are like families. They need to work together. You know, finding them is not the answer, but parents who particularly pick up children late, sometimes up to half an hour late, action needs to be taken. Now, the child suffers. When a child is abandoned at school and mum or dad doesn't turn up, this is really traumatic for the child. So what should happen, of course, is that there should be a homeschool contract, and parents shouldn't need persuading that they need to pick up their children within 5 minutes anyway at the end of the school day. So it's really about working together as a family. Fines are very much the last resort. It doesn't work. You have to get people on side. You have to work together. But look, think of the poor child in the middle. You know, they're abandoned there. When they talk about social services, that's where there's a problem. It might be there's a child who's left abandoned at school for reasons which do need investigating. So I support the school. There needs to be a strict line on this. But look, stick together. Schools have to stick together. My school, when I was a teacher, you know, the kids, they ran into school in the morning and they didn't want to leave. That was the problem.
There you go. I mean, look, the problem with the way this is posed, Emma, I guess, is that it makes it sound like this is going to affect loads of people. We've all picked up kids from school, and we know that there's scores of you hanging about in the playground waiting for your kids to come out. This must be only about 1 or 2 regular offenders, surely.
Yeah, and it probably is. And in that case, we need to look and talk to these parents, these families, about how we can support them more. You know, there's also been talks about finding parents that are late in the mornings, and that does not take into account, you know, SEN children, maybe children with anxiety, school refusers. That is not on the parents to then be fined because their children are struggling as well. We need to look at how we can be inclusive and how we can support families, and maybe think outside the box a little bit and look at what are the sticking points for getting children into school and help get them there in a timely manner, because education is important. I don't want children missing school. I'm a governor, I'm a parent myself, I'm an ex-teacher, so I absolutely 100% believe that children need to be in school, but finding parents just isn't an appropriate way of building those relationships and communication between.
Chris, this particular school, which has caused all this fuss, what would your advice to them be? How could they forge a better relationship with parents rather than just fining them?
Well, when I was head, what I used to say to parents, if there were parents who were dropping children off late in the morning or collecting them late, I would say, and I was head of a primary school towards the end of my career, I would say, when we pass on a reference to the next school, we will give an honest reference and it will include attendance. That seemed to work if there was a problem, because parents want to go to a certain secondary school. They didn't want to have a bad record about attendance. So there are certain pressures put on parents. But it shouldn't be done in an too aggressive way. I agree that fining isn't the answer, but we cannot have children left abandoned. And there may be reasons why parents are not getting into school, which are good or bad reasons, and we have to investigate those. You shouldn't need to educate parents to get their children into school. Certain countries around the world, parents appreciate the school. They're desperate to get their kids into school. Think of the girls in Afghanistan. They can't go to school, and if they do, they might get shot. That's the problem there. We need to value education, and sometimes, perhaps some parents, only a few, don't value education enough, are a bit feckless, so we need to tell them, your record of attendance will go on to the next school, if it's a primary school, or if it's a secondary school, the record of attendance will go on to the employer. That seems to work in magical ways.
OK, well, we've got to leave it there, but you both make a lot of sense, I have to say. Emma Bradley and Chris McGovern, thanks very much indeed. Well, Kent Council, because it's a school in Kent, has been in touch and said parents were informed at the start of November last year that pupils who are collected late from school on more than one occasion will be put into an after-school club and a fee of £6 may be applied. The school appreciates there may be occasions where late collection is unavoidable and simply asks that parents keep the school informed.
There you are. And that's about forging a strong relationship with the parents.
That sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
It sounds perfectly reasonable to say if you're late picking up your child consistently, then join the after-school club properly. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think both of our guests made perfect sense there, actually. There you go.
It's nice.
Not that unusual.
No.
Anyway, let's get a catch-up on the sport for you this morning. Aidan McGee is here with that bombshell news yesterday about Jurgen Klopp. I mean, a man who, was it nearly 10 years he's been at Liverpool now?
Arrived in October 2015. He just had a year-long sabbatical, actually, having left Borussia Dortmund, a really successful period there. Maybe that's all he needs now, just a break, recharge the battery. He's only 56 years old, but Liverpool's certainly reeling from that, having, they've got him for a few more months yet. They've got to make it as good as they possibly can. They're still in 4 competitions. And I want to add some insight, if possible, from Mickey Quinn, the former Premier League striker and Liverpool fan. Mickey, good morning to you. Welcome to GB News. I just want to ask you, first of all, what was your reaction just as a fan more than anything when you heard the news yesterday?
Absolutely gutted. Gutted as a lifelong Liverpool fan. I remember going to Boys Pen when I was 6 years old, right up till supporting them now. And as an ex-Premier League player, I mean, Klopp has done so much for the city, for the club. He put them back on the map, really, after mediocrity for so many years. And as a human being, he's second to none as a person as well. So, yeah, it was a shock. I was gutted, and I'm officially in mourning.
Mick, just knowing football people as you do and having been in the game for so many years, does he cut the figure of somebody who's had enough, or do you think he's got another job left in him after maybe a break?
No, I think he's got another job left in him. It could be the German national team. He said he wouldn't manage another Premier League team, which the one thing about Klopp, he stands by his word. I mean, when he first went there, Aidan, he said, we're going to turn the Liverpool fans from doubters to believers. Might take a couple of years. And he stood by his word, and he turned that club around. They were averaging 60 points in the Premier League. He won the Premier League, first time ever. He won the FA Cup after 16 years, the Charity Shield after 16 years. He won the Champions League after 14 years, Super Cup, Club World Cup, the League Cup after 10 years. He won everything. That's why Liverpool fans absolutely love him. He's genuine, he kept his word, and he put Liverpool Football Club, historic football club, back on the map worldwide.
You mentioned the fans there, Mick. Just talk to me briefly about that relationship he has with the Liverpool public.
There's a connection. I mean, you know, as Liverpool fans, you see things behind the scenes. I mean, he's done so much for the city as well, charities. You know, you see him visiting hospitals. The connection with him and the fans is love, genuine love. I know that sounds in football, but it is. You see, he knows they love him, you know, and he loves them. And that is a special connection. Doesn't happen a lot with a lot of managers. I can tell you managers I played with as well, the connection between you and the fans. If you do connect between you and the fans, it's a special bond. You see him ranting on the touchline. You see him going to the fans at the end, punching the air, revving them up. He wants to give them every bit of success. And this season, you know, when at the end of the season, when he leaves, at this moment, they're in 4 competitions and 1 final and well placed to win trophies at the end of the season.
Listen, thanks very much indeed, Mick. That's Mick Quinn, the former Premier League striker and Liverpool fan, reflecting on Jurgen Klopp's time in charge at Liverpool and looking forward to the next few months.
It's Mickey's passion.
Oh, yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Lovely.
I know it is,
It's really lovely to see.
Well, that was what he was about. I mean, that's why he's going to leave a huge gap in the Premier League as well, Jurgen Klopp.
I'll tell you what we don't have on telly.
What?
Enough Scouse accents.
We don't actually.
I love the Scouse accent.
Brilliant.
It's
Well, yeah,
brilliant
Pete Price
accent.
comes on sometimes, doesn't he?
Oh, we have Pete Price. Well, he's officially not a Scouser.
Is he not?
Is he not?
No, he's Merseyside, not Liverpool, officially.
Oh. Yeah, you've got to be on the right side of the river,
You've got to be on the right side of the river.
Lancashire comes into it as well, doesn't it?
Oh, don't ask me how that... It gets very complicated.
Talking of things like that, apparently things are heating up in Melbourne because the women's final is any minute now.
Yes.
And there's a huge...
You're disappointed you can't watch it, aren't you?
Yeah, very, yeah. I'm trying to have a look. There's a huge Chinese population in Melbourne.
Yes.
So they're going for... What's her name?
Zheng Qinwen.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Well, she could be the first Chinese winner in 10 years. Of a major in 10 years, yeah, since Li Na. So it's such a difficult tournament to retain. And if you look at her opponent, Aryna Sabalenka, she could retain the title for the first time, I think it's since 2013, when one of her compatriots did it, Victoria Azarenka. So it's very, very difficult to do that down there, and it's because of the conditions more than anything. And also they go until, when I say early hours of the morning, I mean that's being generous. They go until 4 a.m. sometimes. We've got the men's.
Really?
They do indeed, yeah, they do. You can't do that.
The temperature's better then, isn't it?
Yeah, the temperature's better, but I think it's to do with television as well. As usual.
A worldwide television, I suppose.
Yes, it is indeed. But it's been a great tournament down there. We saw a shock yesterday with Novak Djokovic being eliminated.
Oh, Yannick Sinner, is he going to be the Grand Slam champion?
Oh, he's a multi-talented guy. I mean, he did used to be a skier. Yeah, exactly. He was downhill slalom, I believe. That's what he was.
So he had to take the decision. You know, do I want to be a tennis?
Yeah, it
champ
happens
or
quite a lot.
Happens
quite a lot. Gary Neville had to make that decision when he spurned cricket in favour of football. Usually, the money makes a bit of a difference.
Ah, well, it would do. Yeah, I can't blame him for that.
So ladies' final now and men's final presumably
tomorrow. Yes, indeed. Yeah, Yannick Sinner up against Daniel Medvedev, who was the finalist 2 years ago against Rafa Nadal, and he's got a real point to prove because he's been in 2 finals before. He was 2-0, 2 sets ahead against Nadal that time, and to come to a 5-set defeat. So he'll be looking to add to his 1 Grand Slam.
Yeah, he certainly will. Aidan, thank you very much indeed. Oh, you've had some great guests on today. Lovely stuff, thank you.
Good to see you both.
We've got the papers heading your way, talking of good guests. So Cindy and Stephanie will be here in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 8:42.
It is indeed. Let's have a look through the papers now. Joining us is Cindy Yu and Stephanie Tetchy, who've been with us all morning. And Stephanie, tell us about Sharon Stone and her unfortunate dates.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to start with Shazza, but we might as well. Sharon...
Shazza.
Shazza. Sharon Stone is on the lookout for love. And if Sharon Stone can't find love, it makes me think, what hope is there for us all? But she's gone online. So she's gone on Bumble, but initially they blocked her because they didn't think it was her.
Oh, I see.
Until she put a tweet out saying, please do not take me away from the hive. I am looking for love. It's actually me. But she's opened up about her experiences of online dating, and she says that she's been on 2 dates. One was with a criminal and one was with a heroin addict. And she said they went to a
Presumably that wasn't on their profile accident.
No,
yes, I don't think she knew.
Yeah, because she's saying that he put like a picture of him 20 years ago, and now he's turned up. She was catfish. He's turned up, and obviously she's realised that he's an addict, and she said she had to end the date quite swiftly. But she says she is feeling positive about finding love online, but she says she's had dates where she's been on dates with men where she's turned out being like a therapist for them. One, he was going through a divorce, one whose girlfriend who dumped him. But I think it's quite brave of her to go online to look for love.
I think it's daft.
Oh, ouch.
I think it's crazy because it's Sharon Stone.
Yeah.
So I've just met Sharon Stone on Bumble.
Yeah.
You know what she says in this interview? She says, I'm not looking for sex.
You know, I can go to the supermarket, I can go anywhere if I want to pick up men, if that's what she wants to do. But she's looking for a connection, and I think that's where the online dating part comes in, is because she's actually looking for men who can kind of has that
for real.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, and you know, she's been married twice. She's got 3 kids. She's not looking for, you know.
Yeah, but I would have thought an online dating app was the last place you'd look for a connection.
Can you imagine swiping and seeing Sharon Stones? You'll think, oh, this is not really Sharon Stones. So I don't think people take her seriously. And I think with all the circles she mixes with, can't people introduce her?
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing.
Maybe she wants to stay outside of the Hollywood, you know, bubble.
Yeah.
You know, which probably was a good idea. I mean, I can imagine it gets all a little bit incestuous and toxic in there.
Well, it does. They all go out with each other, don't they?
Yeah.
Celebs are always dating other
nice.
But it's also dangerous. I mean, look, she just said one was a criminal, and the other one a heroin addict. I mean, who's the next one going to be?
She might have had security with her, though.
Well, it's not very sexy, is it? Turning up to a date with a security guy.
Well, it depends on who you're dating. Some people might find out.
Oh, we're learning a lot about you today. Can we have a look at Michelle Mone?
Yeah, so...
Because she's, I mean, Carol Vorderman will be rubbing her hands in glee over all of this.
Oh, yes,
there's
a feud between them.
Yes.
This is an incredible story because now Michelle Mone is being asked for an apology from an extra person, but it's her former lawyer. Now, Michelle Mone's former lawyer says that she has been dragging his name through the mud because he doesn't want to be associated with her PR strategy, basically. So Michelle Mone's PR strategy is going so badly that someone who used to advise her on legal advice has now said, nothing to do with me, Gov. I never told you to lie to the government, for example, you know, all this sort of stuff. And it's actually asked for Michelle Mone to pay some damages, which he would, he says, donate to charity.
Everybody will be after her money now, won't they?
Yeah,
Because they see her
but
as vulnerable.
Well, she can't pay damages. She's had her assets frozen, hasn't she?
Absolutely. If you are part of the PR or the legal team surrounding this, I mean, I can imagine there's a certain level of reputational damage to you.
I mean, just to
You know, it's
remind
become a bit of a
everybody,
punchline.
she made her fortune through her lingerie empire. I mean, absolutely, unbelievable fortune she made, and then was made a baroness because she was considered a real sort of asset to government, and then a company that she swore she had nothing to do with, except that later we found out her husband was CEO of, was given one of these enormous PPE contracts during the pandemic, and it's all a bit.
And the whole their
dodgy.
deal just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger because over the last few months they've done some interviews where they said, you know, she continues to insist it's got nothing to do with her because the money, the profit that they made has gone into a trust which after her husband dies may be benefited by her and her children, but not before. So, I mean, it's all very kind of, you know, tiniest violin in the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
But surely this lawyer must have known that, you know, it's 50-50. They're just trying to make themselves look, you know, squeaky clean. But
But the money she's made. I mean, I was reading about it yesterday in one of the papers. I mean, they've got houses all over the world, and they're not just houses; they are estates. They've got a yacht, you know, an enormous yacht. I mean,
it's just greediness. I'm sorry, it's absolute greediness.
It's showing.
It's
I was looking at some of these various properties and thinking, how do you even enjoy a property that size? It's like Blenheim Palace, one of them.
And I'm sure you get used to it.
Well, I'll give it my best shot.
That's how the rich stay rich, by getting more money, more luxury. That's what they're used to.
Money makes money, I suppose, at some stage, doesn't it? Just
doesn't stop.
No. OK, let's have a look at... we talk about turkey teeth and all that sort of thing, but there's a lot of people going to places like Turkey for more serious operations. And this, I mean, we had a case recently in the papers. Was it liposuction she went for and she died?
And it seems that the British people, us people, we are just ignoring the dangers of cosmetic surgery, cheap cosmetic surgery going wrong, and we are going in our numbers to Turkey. Cheap. Right now it seems Turkey's making an estimated of £20 billion a year from Brits who are going to Turkey to get tummy tucks, bum lifts, all in the aid of the ultimate glow-up. And it seems more than 25 people have died a year, British people, since 2019. But again, Turkey's providing this industry where Brits cannot afford cosmetic surgery over here, but they'll prefer to go to Turkey to get it much cheaper. In Turkey, they've got about 913 plastic surgery clinics. Yeah.
I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
But, you know, I've had some conversations with friends my age or slightly older, kind of like in their 30s, and it's become almost part of self-care. I'm sorry.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Cindy.
Sorry to trigger. But no, the point is, it's become almost a kind of self-care. You know, it's almost like doing your nails. So you just have a bit of filler, have a bit of Botox.
Yeah.
But actually, these are quite serious procedures that you really need to have qualified people to do. You know, if you get your nails done the wrong way around, you know, it's not the end of the world.
I'll tell you what really put me out is when you see, and the hair transplants, now that isn't particularly dangerous. I mean, it potentially could be, I guess. But you see these pictures of men in Turkey, they'll probably all come back like pieces of Lego. But they're all walking about and they've got these massive pads on the back of the heads, because that's where they take the hair from. And these massive pads and all blood and all the rest of it. I think you think, God, what's going on? When I had a hair transplant in Manchester, and there was none of that. I mean, I literally got back on the train after it was done and came home. There's no, you know, I've got any padding or anything.
Gosh, that sounds good.
So what are they doing? It's like a butcher's shop in Turkey, the way they're doing it.
I just think, is it worth the risk? But so many people suffer from low self-esteem these days, where it's like, it's the norm now. Just go to Turkey and get it fixed. And just do the time for healing.
But presumably that getting yourself to Turkey, so the flight, the train to the airport, all of that, plus you must have to pay for the procedure, is still cheaper than getting it done.
It is, and what
Britain.
Turkey's doing, they offer a package. So they'll do the flight and the hotel and breakfast. So you've got these hotels in Turkey where it's all full of people who've had cosmetic surgery.
Oh, Lord.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Great. Can we talk, Cindy? I want to know this about this woman who wants to move house, but she can't because of her husband's hobby.
Oh my gosh! And to be fair to her, she sounds like she's very, very patient. But I don't know if we can get pictures up. But her husband has built a 19 feet by 14 feet mini metropolis out of Lego. And it's in their loft, and it's literally...
Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's got working trains, it's got multiple buildings, it's got multi-storey car park, a zoo, a jazz club, all made out of Lego.
Legoland.
And he started this a few years ago for his grandson, who you can see on the...
He obviously likes it more than the grandson.
He obviously now likes
It's much more about him, isn't it? But the point is, she wants to move house.
Yes, there's poor Hayley White wants to downsize, but she can't, because... That's not going to be dismantled, apparently.
Why? Well,
so,
is he just take it apart and rebuild it, give it something to do?
Well, I think you need the loft size for it.
Yeah.
You know, I think you literally need the physical real estate to have this mini city in there.
I do not understand Lego like that.
I do. We've got Lego everywhere.
I also think it'd be very expensive.
Lego's hugely expensive now.
I have a sort of relation who builds loads of Lego stuff, and she loves it.
A sort of relation, Stevie. You say
Well,
that
it's
with
my.
such disdain.
No. I'm trying to not give away who it is. I don't want to cause offence. But it's. But there's loads of Lego stuff, and and it's always, look at this that she's done.
Oh, we've got a Saturn V rocket and Jurassic Park layout.
And I just find it so awful.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is funny, you know, if you're like an 8-year-old kid, you know, this is fantastic,
But working trains and everything, I love
trains and
that
everything, you know, I think he's the best granddad in the world.
Yeah.
But maybe not the best husband.
No, she should just move out.
Yes, that's right, yeah. But I think the point is also, how do you sell a house like that? You say, and upstairs we've got this massive loft. There's rather a lot of Lego in it.
Where do you keep your train set?
It's upstairs. When one of the sons moved out, as every son moves out, I grab their bedroom and build.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And my absolute ambition is to have the train running through the little tunnel in the wall, going into the next room and then into the next room.
Oh, that is cool.
And then I was going to have summer in one room, winter in another.
Oh, my God,
I love that, Anne.
Is it Lego as well?
Yeah, some of it's Lego, but most of it's just model train.
You see,
I didn't see this side to you.
Oh, I know.
I'm balmy. I built. My son says you're trying to build an ideal world, aren't you?
But you need to get in touch with this man.
I'll take him on.
Yeah. See, maybe I need a hobby.
Yeah, I
Stuff
find that relaxing when you're building things. It's just, it's relaxing.
Well, I'm told as well that taking up a hobby is a very, very good way of losing weight. Because your hands are busy, you're not eating or drinking. You're actually doing things all the time, and it's very good for the heart rate because it just calms you down. So take up a hobby, a creative hobby.
Yeah.
I sort of like the idea of knitting and things. I mean, I'm not a knitter. Tom, but I just think something you can just do. It just keeps your hands busy. And...
It's better than scrolling through Twitter, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Exactly. So
But what would I knit? I'd have to end up with the world's longest scarf.
Well, you're a Doctor Who fan. There you go, wouldn't it?
That's all I could come up with. Lovely. Stephanie, Cindy, it's been great to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. And if you've got any weird hobbies, we'd like to hear from you, please.
Very good,
I mean, nice ones, please. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Anyway, let's have a look at your weather with Annie.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 27th of January. Today, the US government is set to station nuclear weapons at a British base. All that comes as Boris Johnson has vowed to join the army if the country goes to war.
Yes, worrying news this morning. Last week we heard that we might have to go and fight in the future. This morning, the news that the US is putting nuclear warheads back on British soil for the first time since 2008. I'll bring you the details shortly.
Meanwhile, a New York court orders Donald Trump to pay $83 million to the writer E. Jean Carroll for defamation, and that's ahead of a Republican rally in Nevada.
The world remembers the millions of victims who suffered under Nazi persecution on Holocaust Memorial Day.
And King Charles is apparently doing well after undergoing treatment for an enlarged prostate.
We'll be getting a check on your weather this hour, of course. We'll get all the details from Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. There's some Saharan dust in the air for the weekend, so there could be some quite nice sunrises and sunsets. But what's in store for the weather? Well, you can find out with me a little later on.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Just on the conscription thing, which we're talking about, like, it's not going to happen. It's just been, it's not going to happen, but it's caught the imagination of a lot of people. John, hi John, says, if the worst was to happen, ex-servicemen are recalled back into the military first. I left in 1992, but I would gladly serve if recalled. That's a worry, because obviously my husband's just a very recent veteran, so he'd be straight back in.
Neville says, I think national service should be introduced to the young generation to at least instil the basics of service and maybe even a bit of patriotism. My grandfathers and 5 uncles all served in World War II, and they helped combat evil. As a retired electrical engineer, even at the age of 76, I would still happily offer my technical services to my country.
Yeah, good on you, Neville. Margaret says something very similar. Bring back national service. It would train people ready for any action which may be forced upon us. Also, give the younger generation an excellent grounding in morals and patriotism, which seem to be somewhat lacking at the moment.
That's the second person saying patriotism needs a bump up.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would too.
Lacking patriotism at the moment. I mean, you're almost embarrassed. I mean, you can't put an English flag out anywhere. Union Jack you can get away with. Put an English flag anywhere and you're frowned upon now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a very nearby neighbour who's got his garage door painted white with a red cross on it. So that's very much an English flag. You don't think he gets any problems?
No. Well, unless Emily Thornberry drives past.
Well, true.
There might be one or two problems with that.
Tony says, I served in the British Army in the 1970s right through to the 1980s during the Cold War in West Germany, in a missile regiment. I would fight, and I would imagine all veterans from that era would, because we were really well trained.
Well, keep your thoughts coming through on that. gbviews@gbnews.com. Talking of all these matters and the idea about being concerned about the state of the world at the moment, the United States is apparently going to station nuclear weapons back in the UK for the first time in 15 years as tensions with Russia escalate.
Pentagon documents revealed that RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk would host the warheads that are reportedly 3 times as powerful as the original Hiroshima bomb.
And as we were saying, all linking to this sort of concern about Britain perhaps being at war at some point in the next 20 years. It's all a bit hypothetical at the moment, but the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has vowed to fight for his country if we ever needed him.
Well, our political reporter Catherine Forster joins us now. I mean, Boris, in fact, his column today is very amusing. He talks about his time in the Combined Cadet Force. By the sound of it, he wasn't a model soldier. But the sentiment is interesting, isn't it? He's saying, I would join up and fight. And that's what so many, overwhelmingly, people who are watching the programme today are saying the same thing, if they're of a certain age.
Yes, I mean, I don't think they would have Boris now because of his age, etc. But the sentiment, absolutely. And this is something that I suppose because we have lived in a largely peaceful world for so long, the younger generations have never known war. It's been something that's happened on the telly thousands of miles away. There hasn't felt like a need or a direct threat to Britain, but it does feel, unfortunately, like that is changing, doesn't it? Obviously, we've got this terrible conflict in Israel, in Gaza, and we've already got the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. And plenty of people thinking, well, why are we bothering with what's happening in Ukraine, sending money in a cost of living crisis? But of course, Ukraine is part of Europe. And the message now that we've been hearing this week, Russia will start in Ukraine, but it won't stop there. So we need to prepare ourselves now. And Europe really has not done that because we've thought that wars involving ground troops in Europe are a thing of the past.
But you can understand people getting a bit worried at the moment. And I wonder what has changed. Because suddenly you've got big army bod saying, oh, well, that we need a civilian force. We're possibly talking vaguely about conscription, the Prime Minister ruling it out, Boris Johnson ruling himself in, US warheads heading over to Lakenheath. I mean, it suddenly seems like there's been this massive escalation where nothing has actually changed in real terms over the past week or so.
Well, certainly in Ukraine, it feels like pretty much a stalemate, doesn't it? But it is going on and on. Putin shows no signs of pulling back. Also, the conflict in the Red Sea, I suppose these separate theatres of war, worries about China, Taiwan, Iran, North Korea. And it's having real cut-through, isn't it? I mean, my 18-year-old son, who does not follow the news closely, said to me the other day, Mum, do you think we will be conscripted? And I was like, no, it's never going to happen, never going to happen. But this is something that even people not closely following this, are picking up and being concerned. Now, the point about conscription made by Sir Patrick Sanders last week, he's basically saying the army as it currently stands is too small for us to be able to defend ourselves. I think it's a plea, really, to boost recruitment and spending, and the government have said they'll get it up to 3% of GDP by 2030. Number 10 have also stressed that we're the second biggest NATO defence spender in NATO and the biggest in Europe. But relative to what we have, army numbers are very low. The same applies to the Navy. We haven't felt the need to. And I was at the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, made a big speech a couple of weeks ago to Defence chiefs. And the comment that struck me more than anything was when he said, we're leaving a post-war world, we're now in a pre-war world, which did sound
Ominous.
Ominous.
It does, doesn't it?
Because
maybe maybe it needed to be said.
Yes. So, as you say, nothing significant has changed, but all these noises now, and I think focusing minds on the military capability that we do or do not have. And many people think that's lacking.
OK. Thanks very much indeed, Catherine.
Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Donald Trump has been ordered to pay more than £65.5 million in damages for defaming a columnist.
Yeah, she accused him of destroying her reputation after he denied that he raped her nearly 3 decades ago.
In response, Donald Trump said he fully disagrees with the verdict and he will be appealing, and he called it a Biden-directed witch hunt.
Let's talk to US political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, good to see you. And what are we to make of all of this? I mean, it's not the sort of thing that would ever happen in the UK. The ins and outs don't seem that clear in a way. If he's never been charged with rape, but he's defamed her by calling her a liar, it all seems very odd. But then these damages, which are astronomical.
Yeah, and while you say it will never happen in the UK, it's actually happened twice already in the United States to Donald Trump over the same case. Remember, he was already found liable for sexual assault, and he was ordered to pay her $5 million. And actually, this is a second bite at the apple that E. Jean Carroll for continued defamation by Donald Trump. And going into this trial, the defamation had already been declared. The only issue during the entire trial was actually what and how much would Donald Trump actually have to pay her. And what we saw was this astronomical figure that the jury actually came back with. And it's also important to note that the jury actually came up with this decision in very little time. They only deliberated for a few hours before coming up with this enormous amount that Donald Trump is now ordered to pay.
Having to pay that sort of money, and we know that it's a very expensive business running for the presidency, could that stop him in his aims?
Well, no, because we do know that Donald Trump, even though he has a very high burn rate in terms of the amount of money that he is spending both to campaign as well as to pay his legal bills, what we have seen from Donald Trump is his ability to raise high amounts of money from his base. But also, too, what we're seeing here is Donald Trump has been using these criminal and civil proceedings as a campaign and political prop. So while I suspect that this could be potentially damaging for Donald Trump in a general election matchup, I'm pretty sure that he will be able to raise enormous amounts of money even after this verdict against him came down yesterday.
Is it fair to say this is partisan? One of our guests earlier on was saying, well, it's even a partisan jury in all of this. I mean, she's been awarded 10 times more than she asked for, which seems extraordinary.
Well, if you look at where the trends are going, particularly with these types of cases, we see Donald Trump has now been hit with a $83 million and damages that he has to pay her. If you look at his former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, he was recently hit with a more than a $140 million defamation award that he has to pay to election workers. And so what we're seeing here is and then also, of course, you look at the Fox News case, and that enormous amount, more than $700 million they have to pay, and that election issue. And so what we're seeing here is these electoral civil cases against individuals and companies, it's a trend, and we're seeing record amounts of money actually being awarded in damages for their ongoing efforts to either defame or ruin someone's character.
Yeah, I mean, in any other situation, that would be enough to sort of completely discredit a presidential candidate. But when these things happen to Donald Trump, they just seem to make him more famous, more of a vote-worthy character, more popular, don't they?
They do, and I think it's a tale of two elections, the general election versus the primary, and then it's also, I think, a tale of two Trumps. Donald Trump, the criminal defendant, versus Donald Trump, the presidential candidate. And I think what we're seeing here is Donald Trump is having enormous advantages as a result of the criminal proceedings. But I think all of this is going to change, and it's going to change abruptly when I think there is this pivot from the primary to the general election.
OK, Eric Ham, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's going to be such an interesting
It is
race.
fascinating race, yeah.
Now, today marks World Holocaust Memorial Day. It's a time to remember the millions who died during the Holocaust under Nazi persecution, as well as commemorating the genocides that followed in Cambodia, in Rwanda, in Bosnia and in Darfur.
Well, we're joined now by someone who's co-chair for the UK Holocaust Memorial Foundation. Lord Eric Pickle's with us now. Hello, it's lovely to see you, actually.
Nice to be here, thank
and it's
you.
a very poignant day, isn't it? And it's a day that's designed to make us remember.
It is. It's 79 years since Soviet troops came into Auschwitz, and to their shock and horror, found what was happening there. And it's symbolic of all the death camps that occurred. And it was a unique event. The genocides that followed were dreadful, but we shouldn't forget that the Holocaust was unique because the state used the full panoply. They used murder by industrial methods, and even when the Nazis knew they were going to lose the war, they continued with the death camps and actually started to accelerate the killing.
Well, I was saying to a guest earlier on, I've talked about this for so many years, and you sort of say, well, we need to remember. It's important that we remember so that stuff like this doesn't happen again. But yet here we are in 2024, where we're in the wake of a massacre in Israel, not that very, only a matter of months ago, and we're at a state where even in the UK, levels of anti-Semitism are rising. It seems extraordinary.
Yes, I don't know what's happened to our country. I mean, even before Israel started to retaliate on the 7th, there were people dancing in the streets of the United Kingdom celebrating the murder of children. And every Saturday we're seeing people pouring out in this great Jew hatred. Now, of course, not everybody who's marching on there is an anti-Semite, and I think the overwhelming majority aren't. But the worrying thing is they're actually prepared to walk next to people who hate Jews or calling for the killing of Jews. They're chanting anti-Semitic songs like, From the River to the Sea. I mean, it's an ethnic cleansing anthem. It's about pushing the Jews out of Israel.
Well, how do you explain it then? Where has this... I mean, I was shocked, but then I'm not Jewish. And I think a lot of people who are Jewish have always known that there's this sort of bubbling resentment.
Underlying.
Yeah. I was truly shocked by the level of anti-Semitism there, ready to sprout. Were you shocked by that?
Yeah, well, I'm not Jewish, and I'm very shocked. I mean, last weekend we had I think 3 Israelis in the centre of London speaking Hebrew who were picked on by a crowd, had to go into a shop, and then the shop starts to demand money from them because of the damage that occurred. It's a dreadful situation. People can't go on the tube wearing a kippah or wearing a Star of David. How we deal with minorities
One of our
is
most
how...
famous ever actresses, Dame Maureen Lipman, said she, as a Jew, feels that there's nowhere safe for her in the UK.
It's heartbreaking. It is absolutely heartbreaking because the Jewish character, the Jewish philosophy is a fundamental part of Britain, as indeed Muslims are. And for us to actually want to remove people on the basis of their religion or their race is dreadful, and that's why it is so important that we remember, because the Holocaust didn't start with the gas chambers. It started with words, it started with discrimination, and it started with people being excluded from society.
So how important is it then that you, as co-chair of the UK Holocaust Memorial Foundation, are not Jewish? Because there is some people will look at all of this and go, well, it's all about the Jews, talking about the Jews. Actually, what's important with remembering all of this is it's the people who weren't directly affected remembering this, isn't it?
It's important for us all to remember it. I don't think it was a consideration when David Cameron appointed me that I wasn't Jewish, but I've always been involved in anti-racist activity, even longer than being a member of the Conservative Party, whether it was against Muslims, against Jews, against anyone. It's something I passionately believing. But if the Holocaust is just about Jewish people and they're concerned only for Jewish people, then Hitler won. Because it's about humanity.
It's about everybody, isn't it? So how do we address this bubbling, as I said, this tide of hatred? How do we stop it? Obviously, by having a day like today and talking about it and remembering. But we need to do more, don't we?
Well, I think we need to have zero tolerance to anti-Semitism. We can't have people calling for jihad on our streets. Now, of course, some police officers told me that jihad can mean everything, from a hot cup of tea to calling for a holy war. Now, I mean,
I'm baffled by that.
I'm not an
frankly.
expert, but I'm pretty sure that the people standing on our monuments screaming through megaphones are not complaining about the temperature of their tetlys. It's straightforward Jew
But
hatred.
actually, a lot of journalists found that when they went along to various of these marches and they actually confronted people who were shouting things like "from the river to the sea," they actually went up and said, "What river? What sea? Do you know what you're talking about?" And they didn't. And some of them didn't even know what the Holocaust really was.
Well, that's
So
right.
how do you address that level of ignorance?
Well, and of course it's going to be even more difficult because the people who survived the Holocaust are now quite elderly. And when it starts to move from contemporary into the history books, it's going to be more difficult. Now, the United Kingdom has a special responsibility because from the beginning of March, we take over the presidency. I become the chairman of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And the thing that we're going to be targeting is Holocaust distortion and denial. And there's some quite sophisticated stuff out there that it tries to influence people, tries to diminish what's going on, tries to undermine things.
I know it sounds a bit woke when you sort of say, well, you can't do one thing without considering another. You know, we should be able to focus on the Holocaust, for example, without having to have any other considerations. But with the current tensions, and talk about getting rid of hate and having more understanding, as much as we focus on the Holocaust and in this current situation the Jewish side of the argument, the Israeli side of the argument, do we also need to look at Palestinians at Gaza? Do we need to bring them together a little bit in our discussions?
I think it's important to differentiate between Palestinians and Hamas.
Yeah, oh, absolutely,
Israel is at war against Hamas, not against the Palestinian people. They've been put in harm's way. This levels of tunnels is greater than the London Underground. They deliberately put their folks in danger. They're not very good at firing rockets, so about a quarter of them land in Gaza. They're stealing the aid that's coming in. They're selling it on the back market. So it's not just in the interests of Israel that Hamas is defeated, it's in the interests of the Palestinians. Just think of all the money that you and I and the rest of the world have poured into Gaza, and it's gone into those tunnels. If it had gone into kids' educations, into desalination plants, into industry, wouldn't it have made a big difference? I want to see Palestinian and Israel working together, making for a prosperous region. But these people just want death.
Is there a problem with that, though, in that with Netanyahu saying two-state solution is not, isn't within his consideration, when the rest of the world seems to say, well, that's the clear answer?
What Israel needs is an assurance that people are not going to come out of a Mediterranean dawn again and target people because they're Jewish. So you need to ensure, a bit like the discussion you had earlier, that there isn't going to be mutually assured destruction. There's got to be a basis of working together. Now, I'm a frequent visitor to Israel. I've seen lots of Palestinian and Israeli joint ventures that are pretty good. And we should always remember that 21% of Israeli citizens are Arabs with full rights. And many of the people that were murdered on the 7th were Bedouin and Israeli Arabs. It's about the nature of the state of Israel that Hamas wants to destroy. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to see the destruction of Israel.
That's a fair point. Lord Pickles, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. In terms of getting that education and all the rest of it, I mean, I've never been to one of the concentration camps. I think it'd be a fascinating thing to do. But I have been to the National Holocaust Museum in Berlin.
And I've been to the one in Tel Aviv.
Which is when you see there's one room which is literally full of schools.
Oh. It's funny because we were talking about education.
You need to see that.
Yeah.
Kids need to see that.
But that's how. I don't remember ever sitting down in school and being told about the Holocaust. We just knew. Is that because our parents...
Well, families talked about it, I
Maybe they
guess.
did, yeah. And there were documentaries and things like that. But I never remember being sat down in school, in class, and being taught it.
No, I don't know. You mention it.
So where did we get that knowledge from?
I don't know. But maybe that's why that knowledge is waning now because, it's the generational thing and all the rest of it.
Anyway, do let us know your views. It's gbviews@gbnews.com, as ever.
But in the meantime, let's get a check on the weather. There might be some better news ahead today. Here's Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
Now, do stay with us because coming up next is an absolutely fascinating medical breakthrough, hopefully. It's the first vaccine, or at least it's an injection treatment. I don't know whether we should call it a vaccine or not, but they're all calling it a vaccine, to treat bowel cancer. And it could be available in just 2 years. So do stay tuned to find out more. You're watching Breakfast with him and me.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, now this is really fascinating. The first vaccine, I think that's the right word, but we'll ask, to treat bowel cancer could be available in just 2 years. It's set to be trialled on the NHS and in Australia in a world first.
Yeah, a jab. A jab to get rid of cancer? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it would be unbelievable if it was possible. Anyway, it's going to be trialled at the Royal Surrey NHS Foundation Trust, and experts say it could completely rid patients of the disease.
Yeah. The reason I worry about it being called a vaccine is when you think of a vaccine, that's like we've all had vaccinations to prevent you getting something. But in this case, it's going to be a treatment for people who have already got bowel cancer. And they say it's going to be a game changer because in some way it will be able to target the tumour. Let's find out more.
Yes, yeah, the founder of Think Bowel Cancer, Kathy McAllister, joins us alongside consultant oncologist Professor Angus Dalgleish. Angus, can I start with you? What do we know about this injection, how it works?
Well, first of all, I've been involved in developing cancer vaccines for at least a couple of decades and have been through all the problems of it. And this vaccine is slightly different from the others because instead of targeting specific antigens on the tumour, which has always eventually failed because the tumour becomes resistant, downregulates them, they're targeting a specific gene which is mutated and makes the tumour very susceptible to immunotherapy. Now, one of the things that must spell out very clearly here is this vaccine is only aimed at about 10 to 15% of people who have colorectal cancer, because only they have this particular gene. But it is a fantastic target because it's been shown already that if you target this with an antibody treatment, that the patients do incredibly well. And in the early phases of developing of this vaccine, they thought if we target with a vaccine the same way, which is perfectly reasonable to say try and get the body's own immune system to target this gene as opposed to giving a large amount of antibody to it, will this actually make it produce? And they're doing this before they resect the treatment. We call this neoadjuvant treatment. And looking up at the data they have already, they've had occasional complete responses, which is very, very encouraging for them to go ahead with a larger phase 2 study, which they're going to be doing in Adelaide and Guildford.
And could it be a game changer in the fight against bowel cancer?
It could, but as I really highlight, it is only for the people who have this gene at the moment, which is 10 to 15%. However, these sort of things are proof of principle. Once you can show that you can do it with that, you can start looking at targets for the other 85, 90% of people. So it's going to be step by step. But I mean, I've seen many vaccine proposals over the years, and most of them have failed. And certainly we developed them in melanoma. And it's because they target too specifically. Having a target which is more shared and is kind of not going to go away is a very good strategy. So I think, unlike a lot of attempts we've had to review and comment on in the past, this one really has very considerable hope. But as I say, it's for, unfortunately, only the minority of people with colorectal cancer.
Cathy McAllister, so we've got to be careful not to over-egg the pudding a little bit, if you like. However, it's about hope, this, isn't it? Hope for those people who carry that gene, and hope for everybody else if this sort of technology and gene therapy, if I can use those terms, can be moved forward.
Yes, Stephen. Good morning, firstly. Yes, as you said, it would be unbelievable if something like this was possible, and hopefully it is. The developments are amazing, so it's great news. But yes, it is only for a small percentage, and it's as yet untested completely. So they're still diet and exercise and going to the doctor as soon as possible is when you have any symptoms. That's still, I would say, the best way to protect yourself if you can.
I mean, you've formed this organisation called Think Bowel Cancer, and that's the point, isn't it? It's, again, one of these cancers that you've got to have the courage to watch out for the symptoms and act upon it fast, because, my God, you've had a rough time fighting bowel cancer yourself, haven't you?
Well, I have, but I think there are so many people. I think it's 43,000 people in the UK get diagnosed with bowel cancer every year. That's a big amount. And 16,500 people lose their lives because of it. So it's not just me. I'm very grateful for the treatment that I've had, but I do wish that I had gone sooner. And I would encourage people to go sooner, to look out for those symptoms. It's one of those cancers that people are a bit embarrassed to talk about it. It's a little bit taboo, but it shouldn't be, because it's a cancer that is very, very, very treatable. And the survival chances and the survival rates are so high when you get diagnosed at a very early stage. So we just need to bust that taboo of talking about it and talking about anything around your poo or bleeding from your bottom, and encourage people, if they see any of these symptoms, just go as quickly as you can.
Yeah, no, look, excellent advice. A final thought, Professor, if I could. I know it's conjecture a little bit, but because there is all this oncology work which focus on genetics, really, are we heading in a direction? Does this give you hope that we are heading in a direction where this sort of treatment can be expanded to all sorts of cancers?
Yes, but it will be a step-by-step logical way to go. Certainly the genetics revolution has highlighted targets that we can use, such in this case, which has been shown to be very effective for targeting antibodies. And we know that that family is quite broad, so we can select a variety of other targets to go. And we know they're shared amongst the big common tumour types. So that's cause for being very optimistic in the future. But at the present time, and I agree, this vaccine is no substitute for early diagnosis and treatment. In fact, we showed in a very early study we published some years ago that, to our amazement, patients with even small colorectal cancers had really marked immune suppression. And we knew it was caused by the cancer because when we cut the cancer out, the immune system jumped back to normal, which means this type of approach is very exciting to proceed for this particular cancer.
Well, look, it's really good to talk to both of you this morning. Let's hope it is all a very positive step in the right direction. Professor Dalgleish, Cathy McAllister, thanks very much indeed.
Isn't it interesting, I suppose, and it just shows that even on our programme, just within a week, we've been talking about prostates And now we're talking about bowel cancer, and Kathy there gave us the sort of the symptoms, the bleeding from the bottom, looking for your poo, all sorts of things like that. We're talking about things that we would never have talked about so openly, I think.
Oh, no, we are.
A few years ago.
Yeah, we are. And even though it still feels a little bit uncomfortable, it's got to be talked about. But, of course, talking about prostate is down to, of all people, the king.
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought it?
Well, the latest news is that he's doing well, apparently. Queen Camilla seemed very happy when she came out from visiting him yesterday. We know he's been through some sort of a procedure, and we know he had an enlarged prostate. There you are, I've said it. Yes. But he was spotted entering the London clinic on Friday morning with the Queen by his side. And that, of course, is the same hospital where the Princess of Wales is being cared for following her abdominal surgery.
Well, let's talk to Editor-in-Chief of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward, who joins us now. Good to see you, Ingrid, as always. Look, I mean, we're not going to get masses of updates on the King, are we? But he seems to be doing OK at this stage. What we find particularly fascinating is he used the opportunity when he went in yesterday to visit the Princess of Wales, which actually seems very normal in a way, but not necessarily normal for the royal family. Ingrid can't hear us, I don't think. So let's cut away from that. There you go. Never mind. But I think
that's what they were saying. That some of the papers are saying today that, you know, it would never have happened before. You know, the royal family do certain things very separately. But it was very normal, isn't it?
I can imagine, you know, that he's actually quite a nice father-in-law.
Yeah, I think so.
You sort of think, I can picture it. Do you know what I mean? That he's probably quite nice, popping in and seeing her. And
he seems to be a very good grandfather, doesn't he?
He does seem.
We saw him at the Queen's Jubilee celebrations, and he had George, was it, or Louis, I think, on his knee to try and he just seemed very, very natural grandfather.
Fun.
So why wouldn't he be a
It's funny,
father-in-law?
he's one of these men, and I suppose you get them in all sorts of walks of life, who, the older he gets, the more comfortable he seems to be in his skin. Somehow, which is, I think, a lovely thing to see, actually. I think he's lovely. He seems like a really genuine man. I've never met him. I would very much like to.
But I have, yeah.
Yes, you have. You know everybody.
Well, no, not everybody. But, yeah, it was just wonderful.
It was the King who gave you your...
The King gave me my Obi, one Kenobi. Absolutely. And he was brilliant. He was just lovely. And
charming and warm.
I didn't expect to be so completely...
won over.
Yeah, totally. He was lovely and very jokey and very funny and very knowledgeable, and he appeared to care, which was nice.
Sure, and I'm sure
and
he
I
does.
bet you that's the effect. They always used to say that about...
the Queen.
Yeah, the Queen, absolutely. That when you met the Queen, it made your life, it made your decade. You know, you just glowed after meeting her. And I didn't expect Charles to have the same effect, but oh my goodness, he did. Yeah, he was.
But interestingly, see, I met the current Queen.
Oh yes, that's right. I have not met
a few years ago, and I can't say I was sort of, you know, made my decade or anything like that. But it was a diabetes thing. She was extremely knowledgeable. She was very warm and friendly, and I was really impressed.
Well, there you are, you see. That's me
really
too.
impressed.
Charles spoke to me about my Cot Death campaign, and he really knew his stuff about it. And he was lovely and funny. And, you know, it was a wonderful, wonderful day. I wrote to the palace afterwards, and I said, because there were lots of people, you've spoken, by the time you get there, you've spoken to lots of courtiers and people like that. And I just said, I just want you to know that you absolutely made my day. I was on cloud 9 all day. And when I think about it, I'm still on cloud 9. And if you ever get the chance to pass that on to the King, tell him it meant a lot. And I just thought that, you know,
it would have got to him. It would have got to him.
It probably did. And they ought to know.
Yeah. I think it's always nice to say, you know, if something is good, to pass that on.
Yes, pass it forward, as they say.
I think you should do. Right, we'll leave it there, should we? Because we need to take a short break so we can prepare for Fake or Fact with Andrew Eborn. It's always a bit of a roller coaster ride. We'll take you through that in just a moment.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now at 9:45, it's time for Andrew Ebhorn's Fake or Fact, which is we love because we have no idea what's going on. So Andrew is here, obviously. What are we talking about? You're surrounded by awards, Andrew.
Award season. I brought along a few of some of the ones which you should rightly be presented with. But I thought, hurrah for Hollywood. It's Hollywood or bust. So I thought what we'd do is look at some of the exciting stuff and some of the myths around Hollywood. And to start with, the iconic Hollywood sign.
Yes.
You've seen, I've got a picture of it here, just to remind you of what it looks like. There we go. There's your Hollywood sign, just in case you didn't know. Did you know... Fake or fact? Did it used to be called Hollywoodland? Hollywoodland.
Yes.
You're saying fake? Oh, you're saying fact?
Yes, I'm saying fact.
You're saying fact as well? Well, I can tell. Brilliant. Both of you are absolutely right. Do you know why it was?
It was a real estate sign, wasn't it? That area was Hollywoodland, and I think it even said something else like, 20% off or something.
Oh, 20% off.
Something like that. And then there was a storm and the land
And that's when
down.
the 20% fell off. You're absolutely right. So it was in 1923. It was originally up there. It fell into disrepair. It used to be illuminated, but that was too expensive. And what then happened in the 70s, they got rid of the land bit. And Hollywood, as it's now known.
And it's all a new sign, because the original sign, I've got a piece of at home.
Oh, have you? Oh, look at you.
Yeah, because the fella when the original one went down, some fella bought it, and he has it in he's American guy, and he's got it in storage somewhere, and he's cuts it up and sells it to people. He brought me a signed piece.
Is that a little bit like the bits of the cross that they sell? Would you make 10,000?
Yeah.
No. You bought it from a reputable
When I was a
source.
kid, I had a rosary that when you opened up the little cross and there was a little bit of wood inside.
There you go. That's what they do.
And that was Christ's cross, we were all told.
It was extraordinary, isn't it? But why don't you bring it in? We should have a look at that.
I should have a look. I'll dig it out.
But how big a piece is it?
It's that big, little piece. But it's all he's signed and authenticated it.
Oh, because he was there at the time.
No, well, he bought it. He bought it. He owns it. Yeah.
I love it.
But then they put it up again.
They did. Well, they did a new version of it because in the 70s it fell into disrepair. But now the Hollywood, basically, I think we had a picture of what Hollywood land used to look like, which was that sort of kind of show. Was it changed, however, to Hollyweed?
Hollyweed?
Because obviously the legalisation of cannabis in that sort of side. So Hollyweed, did the sign get changed to Hollyweed?
As a PR stunt sort of thing.
Well, fake or fact?
All right, I'll say fact.
I'm going fake.
You're going fake? OK, well, I can tell you that Anne is absolutely right. It was a fact. What happened, it was to do... Here we are. There's Hollyweed. There's a little picture on social media. And what happened, pranksters kept on changing it on... There's been a social media rumour for years. But it was all to do with the legalisation. Proposition 64, which legalised recreational use of marijuana that for medicinal purposes. It went all the way back to 1996. But they had those little things. It didn't last very long. And the artist concerned, a wonderful chap called Zachary Cole Fernandez, 30 years old, he got prosecuted for being a naughty boy.
Good.
But good.
But
vandalism.
The first thing you do when you go out there as a tourist, though, is you drive up into the hills and you make sure that... It's very difficult to find the right spot, so you actually got it behind.
And you should go along with Stephen's bit of the jigsaw puzzle and see if it fits.
That's right.
That's what you work on that. Right, Walt Disney.
Yes.
Charming things about Walt Disney. Lots and lots of rumours have spread all over the place about him. So Walt Disney, Mickey Mouse, that's been in the news today. Mickey Mouse, originally named Mortimer. Fake or fact?
Mortimer Mouse, yes. True.
Fact.
Fake or fact? Fact. You're both saying fact. Well, how did you know that? It is
it's a thing, yeah.
It is a thing. So he was originally... Do you know why he was why the name was changed?
Just because Mortimer's too long? I don't know.
Mortimer? Could be Mickey Mortimer.
No, don't know why.
Well, it was actually his wife, Lillian Disney, thought he should... It didn't sound as right to have Mortimer Mouse, even though I like the alliteration.
It's hard to say, yeah.
Mortimer Mouse. It's got a nice little rigour. Did you get
Anyway, you can't sing M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E, can you?
How does it go?
M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E.
I love it. It's got to be good. And the great news is Stephen's got a bit of the tail of the original Mickey Mouse.
Go away.
Which is glorious.
It's got to be horrible.
Mickey Mouse, a glorious thing then. A Mickey Mouse gas mask was produced during World War II. Is that fake or fact?
Fact.
Fact.
Fact. You're very good. You're both on fire today. It's absolutely right. And do you know why it was?
No.
To encourage children.
there it is.
To encourage children to duck and cover.
It was absolutely that. So they weren't terrified about it. There were 1,000 Mickey Mouse
that's terrifying,
gas masks. Isn't that scary? I think that's scarier than a normal gas
Reminds me of a Doctor Who episode, if you know the one I mean.
Oh, yes, it does. No, extraordinary. But that's what happened.
Are you my mummy?
That one.
Hey, and are you? No, it should be good. The Sun Rubber Company produced them, 1,000 of those, and it was exactly that, to make sure that children weren't scared of putting it on. Right, Mickey Mouse, OK, he's in the news a lot. Is there a new slasher movie featuring Mickey Mouse? Fake or fact? New slasher movie featuring Mickey Mouse.
I have no idea. I'd go
fake because I think Disney would stop it.
Ah, very good.
Yeah.
And they would have done normally, but the original Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse is out of copyright. Copyright, my bag as an IP lawyer, 95 years is basically for anything with corporate authorship, the copyright expires. So it is now available, but it's only the original. The one you've got here, what they're showing, is the modern version of Mickey Mouse, which is still in copyright.
Yeah.
So this particular one is an infringement of copyright.
I am
but the original
staggered.
Steamboat Willie is not.
I am staggered that when you look at the Disney Corporation, that anything to do with Mickey Mouse, that they would allow their copyright to expire.
Can you not
somehow. extend
it?
No, well, they did originally, and it's Sonny Bono and so on and so forth. They fought for a long time, and it was extended a few times as a result to get that sort of copyright. But Steamboat Willie, which is, that's the picture of him there, he is now out of copyright. Similar thing happened to Winnie the Pooh. You might remember a couple of years ago, and I spoke extensively about this, they did a horror movie with him as well, called Blood and Honey, which was childhood destroying on that sort of basis, which is interesting.
Oh, dear. Now, we've got 2 minutes. What else have we got?
Steamboat Willie, I spoke about that. Well, the final thing, then, let's since we're doing lots of Disney, was the other rumour that always happens is they talk about Walt Disney, Disney on Ice. They talk about him being frozen. So there we go. So the final bit then, fake or fact, was Walt Disney cryogenised?
No, he wasn't. That's a fake.
OK.
I'll say fact, just
You're
for the fun of it.
fact, just to make sure.
Because it was always talked about. Or his head or
well,
something.
I can tell you here on GB News, we can tell the world it was, in fact, fake.
Fake, yeah.
So Anne is actually
Well,
right.
they've denied
Anne, this week's
it.
winner. They have denied. Well, no, but even more on that sort of basis. He thought there might be cryogenics. His daughter said no, it didn't happen. He'd never even heard of cryogenics. Not only that, he was in fact cremated. So Disney was not reincarnated as Disney on Ice. It was that sort of principle. And this week's winner, many congratulations.
Thank you. When you go into Disney World, there's a beautiful big statue of Walt Disney holding Mickey Mouse's hand. And they're both walking. It's really lovely.
Oh, I've never been.
Oh, you've got to go.
I've never been. But why is it, Andrew, that all these bits and bobs, like the cryogenics, all of it, that they enter the public consciousness, even though they're totally wrong?
Repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. And what happens, they always say that a lie goes halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. And what they've done psychological stories about this, that lies are much more interesting than the truth. So you never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. And that's what we do on Fake or Fact. And what I love is that people are suggesting stories for Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact, and we dig into it, and together we can unpack it. But we're living in a diseased information world. And you had Taylor Swift this week, you know, right in there, talking about deep fakes and so on and so forth. So it's front and centre every day there are breaking stories.
You've got to be educated, haven't you?
Are those awards fake or fact?
No, these are all mine. I did win I won the Oscar. This is particularly good. This is recreated. This is the Trick Award, which you won, and you've yet to receive your Trick Award.
I haven't got a copy of it yet. No, I might just take that one.
Well, you can have it. I was going to put it on eBay, but you can have it.
Nobody will notice.
You could put it with your bit of the Hollywood sign, couldn't you? That would be good.
No, that's in a cupboard.
I love it.
And any award has to go in the downstairs loo. Everybody knows that.
It's got to be good.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure to see you.
Peter and Ellie are here now with Saturday Morning Live.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It's going to be a dry and fairly mild weekend for most of us, but it will turn windier, especially by Sunday. There will be some fairly persistent rain across the far north, and that rain will be persisting through much of the day, mainly across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, it should be another dry and bright day, though the sunshine will turn hazier through the afternoon as cloud starts to build from the southwest through this afternoon. It'll also be quite a breezy day, particularly across western coasts, but it will be a mild one. Temperatures similar to yesterday, if not a little bit higher, around 10 or 11 degrees quite widely. Through this evening, the cloud will continue to thicken from the south and west, and we'll see the persistent rain across the far north of Scotland continue. But with that thicker cloud moving in from the west, some drizzly rain might develop across parts of Wales, the southwest, as well as northwest England from time to time. But it will stay dry and clear across the south and east, so it will be a chillier start to Sunday across more eastern areas. By and large, Sunday will be another dry day for the bulk of the UK. However, it will be a windier day and a cloudier day. Gale force winds are expected through the Irish Sea, so quite a windy day, particularly across western coasts. And we'll see some more persistent rain arriving into Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland after a brief drier interlude through the morning. But it will be a much milder day with highs of around 14 degrees. See you later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's